Greetings, everybody. It's time to discover Bond. We're back with Robert Meyer, Burnett, and today we're talking about On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and I'm sure we'll discuss a little bit about the MGM Amazon deal and how that probably affects Bond and all that goodness. So welcome, everybody in the chat. We want to thank you for being here. We have Andre, the boss man, with us today. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Greetings, everyone.
Welcome, welcome. And we also have joining us a special guest, Gary, not Jerry, from Pop Culture Minefield. How you doing, buddy?
I'm so excited to be here, guys.
Yes. You guys probably know Gary, but if not, do check out Pop Culture Minefield. And somebody who doesn't need an introduction, but we're going to give him a super duper one anyway, because he is the man himself, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett of the Burnett Work. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Can we just talk about, speaking of introductions, how much I love the new Midnight's Edge logo and music? Can we just talk about that for a minute? Like, can we wax rhapsodic about how great that is?
I'm sure.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Who made it would love to hear it. Yes.
Man, do I love that. I love the music. I love how it harks back to your other piece of music. It's new and yet awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
The music is actually by Doidank, a very talented Norwegian artist, and he's the one who made the previous music as well. And you'll, as you pointed out, Robert, in this new version, you can hear the old one inside of it, which is one thing that I really like about
I love it, especially at the end when the Midnight's Edge M is resolving with it still harks back to your original thematic elements, and it's great. I love it. I love the graphic treatment as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure Thomas, who made that one, will appreciate it. So anyone wondering, you can find the social media links of the two artists behind it in the description for every single one of our videos. So if you also are in need of their services, I'm sure they wouldn't mind.
Oh, they're great. Great.
They are indeed.
And while we're a little distracted,
I was about to say that something else is great. Is everyone that's watching us right now? We have quite the collection in the chat. We have Script Doctor here with us in spirit, although he's physically at work. So it's great to see you here.
Darn him for having a real job.
We have quite a few members here. I see we have Karius, who says hail chat. Johnny Zucco is here, and he says that John best Roger, second product time, and Dalton not the best, but only because he had two films. Not sure if lost it. Yeah, that's like the Dalton. We'll get back into that in due course.
And thank you for also being a member as well.
Yes, indeed. I think we also got a new member here over the... Yes, we can also welcome Johnny Zucco as a new member.
Yes.
Which is perfect. And we also have a couple of super chats that we're going to go through before we get into the...
as well.
Yes, indeed. Says, hi, gents. Always think about my dad when I see a Bond film. He loved Bond films and never got enough of them. This is actually the same with my dad, come to think of it.
Same here.
And Mags sent us a super sticker. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Yeah. And then we have Clifton 3D, also just became a member. Thank you so much and welcome. We got some more exclusive member content coming now very, very soon. And Johnny Zucco also says for $10, thanks for chatting about this film. What are your thoughts about the semi-filmed rooftop scene after the coat of arms scene? Hold your thoughts, because we're going to get into that. We're just going to talk about the movie, and then we're going to get into the specifics of each and every individual scene in here. And then says, is it true every man wants to be James Bond? I always wanted to be a Bond girl.
I don't know who really wouldn't.
But yeah, Mr. Burnett, have you always wanted to be James Bond?
Always. I mean, the guy knows he can walk in anywhere. He knows what the perfect food to order is, how it pairs with whichever champagne at whatever perfect temperature it's sold at. He knows or served at. He knows something about everything, and no women can resist him. And he knows how to kill people with his bare hands. And he dresses impeccably well. What is not to love?
Yeah, indeed. Jerry, anything to add to that?
It's not Jerry, it's Gary.
Fine. Jerry,
That's why I didn't respond.
Jerry,
I'm like,
anything to add to that?
well, I my first gig, professional gig in acting and all that shit was doing voice impersonations, and I did the entire James Bond Film Festival at the University of Illinois, and I really was a fan of Bond until I went to the Bond Festival and I became an Uber fan. And that festival changed my life, 1996. And I got to do Sean Connery's voice, and which was fun. Greetings, Miss Moneypenny, of course. So, and I got paid for it.
That's always good.
So it's professional voiceover work. There you go.
Yeah.
But
I'm a big Bond fan, so there you go.
Yeah.
And before we get to the rest of the... Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, and Gypsy Warrior says, the On Her Majesty Secret Service level of 007 Legends was amazing. You know what else was amazing? James Bond, The Duel for the Sega Mega Drive. That was also an amazing game. That's one Bond game I have played.
Yeah.
And Troy Pacelli says, On Her Majesty's Secret Service was my favorite Bond film until Casino Royale. That is why I claim Lazenby as my favorite Bond, though that's probably not strictly true. IIH. What's IIH stand for?
I don't know.
Anyway, so we have a Lazenby supporter here already, so that's cool. And Dash D's says, I'd like to thank you all for your kind words yesterday. In a hard time, to have people in your life that care and reach out makes all the difference. That's what we're here for. This is a community, as it has become. So we like to keep people informed, but we also want to like to provide a community when needed. So yeah, you're most welcome. And with that, Tom, you were saying, okay. If I'm honest, that's what it's for.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, I was just going to break from the Bond news just for a moment because you and I were talking about something just before the show, Andre, and now that Robert's here, I'm sure he'll find this interesting. We do have some info now on the Dune disc coming out.
Yes, we do. Finally, it can be talked about.
4K, Dolby Vision, new audio commentary, all kinds of new goodies. But it looks like it's the theatrical cut only. So,
and who are the commentaries from?
Is it?
I got a feeling it won't be the director.
I have a feeling you may be right.
Yeah,
I told you about my dinner with him, right? David
Paul
Lynch.
Salmon and Mike White. Looks like.
Paul Salmon wrote a great book on Blade Runner.
I'm friends with Paul. He's a great guy.
So
very cool.
Unfortunately, it looks like it's only going to be the theatrical cut, though. But by the way, it looks here.
Well, I've got my Japanese Laserdisc with the weird TV cut, so I'm not going to part with that.
So I can tell you, Paul will make it interesting. I'll tell you that he will, because that guy is like a walking encyclopedia of information about film productions, and he'll make up for David Lynch not being on there.
Oh, I'm sure. I will say, though, that I am very disappointed, and I will be given this release a miss for the very simple reason that there is a really, really amazing cut out there. And let's see, Karius knows exactly what I'm talking about. The best cut is the fan cut. It's on YouTube. Well, there are many YouTube or many Dune fan cuts. But as sometimes happen in the case of Dune, there is a fan cut that is vastly superior to the original version of the movie. Now, this is the exact same thing as was the case with Raising Cain, where a fan editor was able to bring something out of the movie that the official editor wasn't. And so in the case of Raising Cain, Brian De Palma had his people contact this fan editor who did that fan edit, and some hands were shaken, and then that fan edit was released as the director's cut in an official Blu-ray release.
Oh, wow.
That is what in my opinion, Universal should have gone here, because the Dune fan community, they are completely aligned behind this one fan edit, the alternative cut redux by Spice Diver. I challenge anyone to see that cut, and then both the theatrical and extended, and say that the fan edit is not vastly superior. And this is something that they could have reconstructed in 4K easily, because they have all the native tapes. They have everything. Like literally, this fan just used what was out there. They could have reconstructed that with no effort whatsoever. Done with what Brian De Palma did for Raising Cain, and have a brand new thing to celebrate. And instead, they just dropped the ball. So I'll be sticking with my DVD.
Do you think going on there? Do you think it's the anti-fan thing that we see so much with studios?
No, I don't. I think it's pure negligence. I think that they're simply not aware.
Just to be clear, though, these are leaked specs from Zavi, so I don't know how accurate they are. Even Bill
I'm sure. Zavi is a distributor. They don't make.
Bill Hunt says to wait for the official ones, but I'm assuming these are pretty.
Yeah. And they own Arrow now, and it's Arrow that's putting this out.
Yes,
and Arrow did in fact release a fan cut of Waterworld. So,
yeah, they did. They did release the what's it called? The Odyssey cut or something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it the Odysseus cut? But it's not that either. It's something like that.
It's something like that. Yeah.
I'm looking at my disc. It's out of reach, but I could grab it. And
and again, you see, that's what I mean. Because they also had the sense to realize that someone actually did better, and there's a universal agreement that they did better. Yeah. And I don't think that I have ever seen a movie where there has been such a night and day difference as with the Spice Diver cut of Dune. Rob, I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I haven't. I know of it. I've never watched it, but with such a ringing endorsement, I've just called it up, and I'm looking at the link on YouTube right now, and I'll have to watch it.
Yeah,
because Dune is a very, it's a very interesting film. I mean, it came out at Christmas time in 1984. In the same couple weeks, Dune in 2010, Odyssey 2 came out, or the year we made contact, came out together in that Christmas time. And it was a great time to be a sci-fi fan and see a sequel to 2001, which I actually has aged pretty well for the most part. And Dune, which is such a weird movie. I mean, it's very odd, but it's certainly beautiful to look at. The set design, everything. I like this movie, and I like even the TV cut that I have on Laserdisc is not the best, but it's going to be fun to watch before Denis Villeneuve's film comes out. So I'm going to watch this, and I'm looking at this. This Spice Diver edit is 2 hours and 58 minutes.
It's a masterpiece.
So
just you watch that with an editor eyes, and you will be blown away with what has been done.
Oh, I can't wait, because there's all those deleted scenes that I don't know why they cut out. I mean, he must have used every available bit.
Yeah, and he's done some really, really clever bits. Like, for instance, this narration that is in like the extended TV intro. Where he's put that. And also the animated bits for it. Like the scene where like Paul, he's on the bed and he's reading on this tablet about Caladan.
Yeah,
he's put it there. He's put it
great.
Seamlessly in there.
I love it. That's fantastic. And then all the deleted scenes that you can get. I mean, it's that's fantastic. I can't wait to watch this.
Yeah, I'll hook you up with the highest possible quality version of it for you if you want.
Yeah, I would love to.
The one YouTube is obviously like limited quality.
Right.
But I have like the full DVD 9 version.
Oh, I'd love to get that.
And I don't know if we grabbed this yet, but this will get us
We
back
didn't.
to the conversation anyway.
Yes.
As much as I'd love to sit here and rather probably talk about Dune, Gypsy Warrior sends us a generous super chat and says, if Sean Connery was in Her Majesty's Secret Service, it would have been the greatest of all time.
Yes,
It's
agree.
interesting that you bring that up,
Damn Skippy.
because that is going to be one of my biggest points of contention in this review. I don't want to spoil it up front, but I actually messaged Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm like, this is supposed to be one of the best Bond movies.
Yes. All right. Let's get into it, because Rob, why don't you begin by giving us a brief overview of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the one movie that didn't feature Sean Connery. It had someone who basically conned his way into a Bond movie, and then he conned his way out again for Sean Connery to make a glorious comeback.
Yeah,
afterwards.
because I've heard short versions of this story. I guess up front, I got to know what the hell happened. Where is Sean Connery? What happened here?
Well, he wasn't even on speaking terms with Albert Broccoli by the time they finished You Only Live Twice. Like, he wanted out. He was not in a good place. So it was sort of academic. They were going to have to replace Bond. They were going to have to replace Connery as Bond. And, they began this worldwide search. And what's interesting is they found Lazenby. He was in a TV commercial, basically, that someone had seen. I don't know if it was Albert Broccoli's wife. I'm trying to find that information out right now. But that's how he came to the production. And I will say this. I love Lazenby's look. I mean, he looks rough and tumble. He's Australian. I mean, he's a fit, handsome guy, and he looks like he could kick the shit out of you.
Didn't like him.
So, well, I mean, I can understand that. I mean, it's interesting because you've been watching the Bond films. You had never seen them before, and it had to have been quite jarring for you to watch the Bond films and then see him as Bond. Interestingly enough, when this movie first aired on ABC TV, they re-edited the movie completely. There's a TV edit of this movie that's almost incoherent, and that's how they first showed it. And obviously, it was very controversial. There was a few things that they broke with when the movie came out. They don't have an opening theme song. They've got the score for this movie that John Barry wrote. It's incredible. It's one of my favorite.
The score is good. Yes.
Bond scores. It's great. And then Peter Hunt, who had been the editor on the franchise up to this point, steps up to the director's role. And as you notice in the opening scene, like the fight on the beach, there's a lot of quick cut, fast editing, jump cuts, things like that were unique at the time, and that nowadays we recognize them. They're par for the course, but at the time it was pretty, I don't know if it was avant-garde, but it was a really interesting way to go with the series. And I think Peter Hunt does a pretty great job directing this movie.
Burnett, can I ask you one thing right there before we move on with the behind-the-scenes history? Because that is one thing that I always felt was jarring, which is in this movie, and you see it right from like the first sequence. And that is that whenever there is a fight sequence, the speed it's visibly sped up. It's like there's no I cannot believe that even audiences when this was first released would think, wow, look how fast they move, how intense. Surely everyone must recognize they sped this up for effect. And in my personal opinion, but again, this could be because I'm watching this now in modern days.
Right.
A complete and total failure, because it just pulls me out of it and it looks completely ridiculous in my opinion.
They sped up on previous versions too. It just wasn't as noticeable.
Yeah, but not as noticeable as this, because
it made me wonder if they had used like a different crew in the production.
Well, I think it was, Peter Hunt as the editor, coming from an editorial background, speed ramps and using those kinds of things and jump cutting was definitely something that I think he brought to the franchise. And I think at the time, because it was not something that was used a lot, it might have seemed like, we look back at it now and it's such an obvious, transparent way of doing things that might not be the
How
best
was
way
it at the time?
Well, I think at the time it was just unique. I don't think that it was something people were necessarily aware of.
I found it rather jarring, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of jump cuts where they're like
a lot.
And it's and what I mean by jump cut specifically is like, okay, you've got the bad guy laying on the ground, and then all of a sudden within a frame, he's on his feet jumping at Bond. Like, it's a total bad jump. Like, I'm like, wait, was there a piece of the film that was badly destroyed they couldn't put there? What happened here? Like,
no, I mean, that was total jump cuts. I mean, that was a new
throughout
technique.
the film, and the backgrounds don't match up with anything that's in the foreground when they do any of the rear projection stuff. I was okay. This is, and I hate to rip on the guy, because this you're basically telling me this is his first directorial role, right? Like, this felt like a made-for-TV movie, even though it was shot in scope. I felt like I was watching Revenge of the Nerds 4. You know how you go from the original films, and then like all of a sudden they like, we're going to do another one, but it's going to be on TV. Like, it felt like a 5th or 6th movie in a series. I'm like, okay, this is, I felt like I don't know. I'm really stretching to try and figure out what I was supposed to see here with this, because the first hour of the movie is boring as shit. I'll be honest with you. It's just fucking boring. And then by the time we actually get to shit happening at the end, there's just so much shit happening in a matter of like 45 minutes. Then I'd get lost, and then I'd figure out where I was. And then I'd be like, why should I care? And then there's the virus thing. So we actually at least get, the Bond speech of the villain telling us what he's after, but it doesn't really even factor, it seems like, into the story. I mean, I'm just kind of like, okay. And then the ending, of course, is just predictable as shit.
But but let me ask you this. What about some people like Gabriel Forzetti, who plays Draco, who's Tracy's father? I mean, I love that character, and I think getting to meet these people, you didn't enjoy. What did you think of Telly Savalas' Blofeld?
He was terrible. I hated him.
I like Telly Savalas.
My least favorite thing
as a person and an actor or whatever, but as this character, Donald Pleasance was better as the bad guy. And the returning cast members were fine, but otherwise I just didn't really notice or care who half these people were. And Lazenby is a horrible fucking actor. Like, he is just horrible. I mean,
tell us how you really feel, Tom.
I'm trying to be as nice as possible, because I did enjoy certain aspects of the film. And I mean, it did feel like a Bond movie at times, but sadly, for some reason, maybe it's because of the director now, that makes a little more sense. The way it's edited and the way it's shot, it felt like a TV movie. And I was just, even more so than when I said that before about the earlier films that were, a little bit more flat. At least those had the more cinematic feel to them. Like, this was all in like this ski resort or whatever, and it just felt lazy to me compared to what
it was not lazy. That was the ski stunts. I thought, the ski stunts were cool. Fantastic.
Yeah. The last bit was all right. Like, again, like, it's not like it didn't keep me engaged enough.
That's one thing I found like really fascinating here, is that the hand-to-hand combat is sped up, and it's so incredibly jarring, and to me at least it's dreadful. But the ski sequences are some of the best I have ever seen. Like, I don't know that we in Norway have ever put such impressive ski sequences to film as that, sports aside.
Oh yeah, no, it's amazing. And what's also, I should mention that the editor of this movie was John Glenn, and he was the second unit director, and of course later went on to direct many Bond films, starting with, I believe, For Your Eyes Only. And he directed For Your Eyes Only. He directed Octopussy. He directed View to a Kill. He directed View to a Kill, Living Daylights, and License to Kill, I believe. So all through the 80s, he became the director of this. They would promote, the Broccoli family had a production crew that was pretty tight knit, and they would promote from within. So,
well, and maybe my issue was right off from the start. The movie got set on a bad note when he breaks the fourth wall. Like, that made me groan. Like, I'm like, oh no, you did not.
Yeah, anytime you break the fourth wall.
And it really did kind of put me, maybe that was what put me in a bad spot to begin with this movie. That could very well be, because like I mean, usually with these movies, I always want to kind of go back and watch them again. This is the first time after I'm done, I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't think I'll ever go back to this one again. At least not unless I'm doing like a full on, gotta watch every last one of them again. Because this is be one I'd probably skip in the future. I feel bad saying it because I know you and a few other people have said it's such a great movie, and I'm just trying to see it. I'm not seeing it. I guess it's just, I don't know.
Well, to me, it's just a different, it's a different milieu. The idea that Bond has kind of left the service and falls in love, and you get to meet. I just find the change of pace, and the more of the spy thriller 60s in a way, the swinging London, even though it's not swinging London, but it's got a whole different feel to it.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's got an actual story.
I was just going to say, this goes back to what Andre was saying before. I liked the story aspect of it. There was bits and pieces in it I could pick out, and I'm like, okay, this is an interesting thing. This is interesting. That's interesting. Why didn't they explore that more? That's where I'm getting where Andre's coming from, where it's like, it was a great story, but the execution, something's off. I'm not sure what it is. And maybe you guys can explain that to me. I've never read the book, obviously, but
my best theory, and again, I wasn't there at the time. I only saw it like on TV when it was on TV, and I saw it like in the early 90s. And to me, something was off with that one particular movie. I think it was a matter of that they tried to go a different direction because they knew they didn't have Sean Connery anymore.
Right.
And I think that someone made a creative decision that, okay, so if we try to make a Sean Connery style movie with someone who isn't Sean Connery, it's simply not going to work. So we have to change up everything. We have a new director. This new director, he has like this new take on how to do action and fights and everything like that. So let's try to go different. Let's skip the opening, everything that's like so closely associated with Connery. We're going to change all of that up. This is the Bond for the future, and then hopefully people will respond to it. I can only imagine that must have been the reasoning behind some of the choices.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. They were trying to go. They were first of all, after going to the epic heights of You Only Live Twice. I mean, Spectre's volcano lair and stealing spaceships from orbit. I think they wanted to go to a stripped down, much more earthbound.
Yeah, very grounded. Yeah,
the approach, much like they did the same thing with For Your Eyes Only after Moonraker. So I think this was the first time they were trying to do that and really, give it a different feel. And I think they were really trying to establish, if they had to move forward with Lazenby, they wanted to try and maybe play to what they thought were his strengths. I mean, obviously, they found him on some chocolate cream commercial. It wasn't like they saw him.
He had conned his way into it. He was selling cars.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I also think that there was an attempt, and that's why Blofeld, I think, was changed the way he was to Telly Savalas, was to be more attractive to the American audience.
Oh
yeah, who loves you, baby?
Yeah, I didn't really have a problem with Telly so much. I mean,
because just as I pointed out, they were having trouble with the American audiences so badly that is why the next film, when they brought Connery back, was shot in America and takes place in Vegas, even though they don't even say the name of Vegas any time during the making or during the story. But it's clearly Vegas that they're shooting at, and all he drove were Fords,
right?
And so Telly Savalas, I thought personally for me was the worst choice as actors go. Even though I love Telly Savalas, grew up on him, that I just felt that he was a terrible Blofeld.
Yeah, I mean, he acted different. That was my issue. Like, I don't care that they changed the actor, because I mean, if you're going to pick somebody, he was probably a good choice. But he's playing it all suave and debonair as opposed to the older Blofeld with it was a completely different character almost.
Yeah, and he's playing it more like a crime boss as opposed to an international leader of Spectre.
Exactly.
You know, and he's got his German Irma Bunt, his henchwoman. I mean, you don't ever feel like he's got a multinational organization of hired killers and assassins. Where is the supreme executive for counterintelligence, terrorism, revenge, and extortion? Not really in this movie.
No.
Although, you know, and let's, you know, I'm going to build this international base at the look. Here's Gloria, and I, while I love it because, you know, the James Bond movies made me want to learn to ski, and I took up skiing when I was a kid and love it to this day, and it was because of this movie. You know, and one of the things I really miss from the Bond franchise is there's no reason. One of the Spectre, we finally get back into snow, and Bond never gets on skis, and I'm like, what? Because there's no real reason. You know, how often are you going to come up in an international spy thriller and need to go somewhere in a mountain with skis on?
Yeah,
Not,
exactly.
You know, that'd be how often do you go onto a golf course?
And as I recall, Lazenby was a hell of a skier.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's but it was cool. And one of my favorite climaxes, I mean, I love the helicopter attack at the end of this movie because you got real helicopters. There's no bad process shots. And there's a few miniature shots, but not many. You're really in this great location. And I think this movie has a lot of great locations and a lot of great location work. And especially they had the cinematographer hanging from a helicopter to shoot the ski sequences. They built a special rig, and they had other stuntmen doing handheld camera stuff. And it's pretty impressive, I think.
Yeah, the last hour of the movie or so is decent enough. Like, my problem was you spend the first hour setting up a lot of stuff that either they didn't do a good enough job explaining as we got going, or it just kind of was for the end to pay off at the end. And it's like, did you really need to set all that up for the first hour?
Well, it meanders.
Like, it does, because like your first, I'm like, okay, so I got this idea. Okay, like Bond is like, you know, he feels like he's, I don't know how to put it, but he feels like, I don't know if he feels like disrespected or whatever, but he goes in and he puts in his resignation, and then obviously Moneypenny changes it to a 2-week vacation. And so they don't really get into that about what's going on there as to why, you know, I thought they were maybe setting something up like, oh, there's something deep going on and they're trying to protect him, but they didn't really get into any of that. And then they set up the whole thing with the marriage to was it Contessa? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, I kind of got that deal. And then I'm like, okay, so then we went through all this for almost an hour just for him to get the information that this lawyer possibly has a connection to Blofeld, which then leads him to this clinic or whatever. It's like, okay, we should have got to this clinic a half hour sooner, because here's where the fun part of the movie begins. Because here's a situation where you get Bond into that you know he's going to have fun with, because they do a kind of a weird job of explaining it up at front. But then I kind of figured it out as like, okay, he's supposed to be gay. Like, that's the character he's playing. I get that. And the whole joke that's going through, and that part got me sucked into it, because I'm like, okay, now you're putting Bond into an interesting situation where you're playing to his strengths and it's humorous. And I was getting into it again, but then, you know, we get to the layer and then it drags out for another 20 minutes till we get to the basic climax. And I felt like Bond was just, I'm like, I don't see why he's in these situations for a while there. He was like constantly trapped. And I'm just like, this just seems very un-Bond like he would find better ways to get out of this than he did. And he finally got out of it, and everything just kind of ended and resolved the way I figured it would, right down to the very last moment. Like, I just called that last bit. And again, it was exciting enough. It was a Bond ending. All that is there. But just that first hour and a half leading to it just felt kind of like I'm not sure what they're trying to do with this here. Because if you can explain that first bit to me, I'm really confused on that, because I was kind of lost until we got to the whole, you know, marriage thing leading to the clinic, because then I kind of knew where I was at.
She needs a man to dominate her.
I was like, what the fuck is this all about? And I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. But yeah, if you can explain that, unless it gets explained better in the next film, then just leave it. But yeah, that first hour, I was just kind of scratching my head through most of it.
See, to me, I guess why I always like that is because I feel like when you meet Drago and you're meeting this criminal industrialist, I love that character. I loved the actor playing the character, and I'm like, I want that dude as my father-in-law. You know, and I've always felt that way.
When he's like a mob boss, I got that part. Yeah,
but he's like a great mob boss. You know, he's like he's into international crime. You know, but I don't think he's necessarily a bad guy. He's a good criminal, and you know, I love Diana Rigg. I love her. I can't. When you first meet her and she's gonna lose at cards and baccarat and Bond bails her out, you know, and she's like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll go to your room and sleep with you. It's just, I love that whole. I was really interested in all of that interplay that was going on, and it's not necessarily Bondian, but to me it was like European aristocracy. I'm rich and traveling in these circles, and I'm a rich heiress, but I'm deeply troubled, even though I shouldn't be. You know, I'm the Lindsay Lohan of my day, and I just I loved all that. And she's extraordinarily beautiful, and the way she carried herself, and you know, coming off of the Avengers, not the Avengers that we all know now, but Emma Peel, like John Steed and Emma Peel. I loved her, and she was so different from any other Bond girl because. She's this. Why are you troubled, lady? You're rich, you're beautiful, your dad can get you anything you want, and yet you want to try and drown yourself. Why? Poor little rich girl, boo-hoo. I just loved all that. I don't know why it appeals to me, but it really does.
I mean, that was kind of my question, is like I was trying to figure out a lot of the connection there, and they just didn't really pay that part off until the end. And even then, I guess the best I could get from that was like he did a deal with them to where he got off on a lot of stuff he did by giving Bond information, and in the process he just wanted to marry his daughter off to Bond because she knew he was a good man, and like that kind of a thing. That's all I got out of that. I'm like, that's got to be the situation, because they don't really explain it, at least unless I missed something, and that's kind of why I was asking. Like,
I think he knows who Bond is, and it's like,
clearly,
you know, if you've left the service, I could use a man like you. You know, I need an ex-00 working for me, because if I have a problem, you can solve it for me. And I can help you with your problems. And I really like that manly relationship that they developed. Like, I would love to have seen another movie where Bond is still working for Draco, you know, and maybe doing, and then he eventually goes back and you find out it's all been a long con the whole time. Like, but of course.
Well, that's kind of what I was waiting for, was the bigger rug to be pulled. And that's kind of what I thought they were setting up in the beginning with Bond quitting, you know, was like this whole, like, okay, there's something deeper going on here thing. And they don't really say that. So unless there's something that happens in the next movie, don't spoil it for me. But because I noticed they were trying to connect this movie a bit more with the earlier films than the other films had done prior to it. Because they even have that little scene where he's pulling out few things, and they even play the little themes in the background. Kind of, you know, I mean, I got those kind of moments I dug, you know, and there is bits in it that I did enjoy. I hate making it sound like I fucking hated the movie. I didn't hate it. It was more disappointed than hate. You know what I mean? It was like I was trying to figure out through that first part what the fuck was going on, and then until we got to the clinic, I was just like, oh, this is kind of boring. I mean, I get I get what you're saying about, you know, those two together were fine, but if it was Connery, I probably would have been more invested. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's a different like, this is the first half of this movie is very un-Bondian. You know, it's not. It's Bond is kind of left and he's drifting around.
Well, somebody brought up earlier in the chat that it's like an Agatha Christie novel or something like that, and like, yeah, that's what it felt like to me. It's like, what am I watching here? Like the first few minutes were Bondish, but then all of a sudden it just, wait, what?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's much more of a stripped down spy thriller than, say, a Bond movie, and I like it for that reason. And it's because, you know, after You Only Live Twice, I don't know where you would have taken the series, and I kind of like the fact that, okay, you have a fresh start with a new actor, and obviously it didn't work out. But to me, I've always known that Lazenby, obviously his skills as an actor are lacking. But that said, he became a stripped down Bond. He led the way for this new approach to the series. And I liked it because I've never been a fan of You Only Live Twice. I liked it when I was a kid, but watching it, it gets a little, it's so.
See, now that's the one I liked a little bit more than.
Yeah, because, well, it's much more pulpy and it's much more, you know, I totally understand. Look, I used to love it because it starts in orbit. one spaceship steals another spaceship and brings it back down to a volcano base. What's not to love? But as I've gotten older, it's a very rickety movie to me. Whereas this, it was much more straightforward, and it's more character based. I wasn't waiting for the next gadget. I just liked to see the interplay, and I loved all the secondary characters and the way that they're acting like we're just in a different kind of a movie. And it's always worked for me. And it's funny that, like Steven Soderbergh, the director, is a huge fan of this movie. And he talks about, he thinks that it represents pure cinema and that it's one of the most cinematic of all the Bond films. And so it's interesting to hear you say that, you didn't like it. And I do think I have to say, look, this is probably like Dr. No. It's very difficult, I think, to go back now in the modern day and watch these films and take them at all seriously, especially if you've never seen them. Because like Tom, like you're responding to what everybody would respond, I think, this way. I mean, I don't think you have to think that you're missing out on something, because it's a very, I would call it Baroque. It's a Baroque Bond movie, if that makes any sense. I mean, it certainly doesn't play as slick as the other films in the series and what we're certainly used to now. So it's definitely an outlier of the whole franchise.
Yeah, I'm one of those where I can sit back and I can totally like put on, I don't know how to put it. I wouldn't call them nostalgia glasses, but I can understand through the certain lens that, this was made at a certain time and these certain things could only be met. I have never had a problem with that part of it.
Right.
To me right now, this one was just more so maybe I'm thinking maybe I missed something, or there was something I was supposed to get out of it that I didn't, or maybe even was that I was expecting something different going into it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That could all be on me. And I'm not trying to say it's the movie's fault in any way, shape, or form, because obviously more than enough people love it that it, that it obviously has something to it. And don't get me wrong, I found aspects of it that I enjoyed. To me, even Dr. No was a much better film to me. I guess the first few so far have all been better than this one. And they just got better as we went along, it seemed like, till now.
This movie has Bond and Tracy falling in love. Like, you've got like a love montage where they travel around and hang out together and canoodle. You're like, what is happening in this movie? And I think that they have a lot of emotion in this film that you don't have in Bond movies, whether it's a father and a potential son-in-law, Bond and Tracy. There's just emotion where you didn't have anything remotely similar to that in any previous Bond movie. And I think
Bond was always depicted as somewhat superficial.
Absolutely.
With women. So yeah, that's why.
Absolutely. And even with people, I mean, the relationship he has with Drago, they have this interesting father-son relationship where they're talking to each other, and you never have seen a relationship that Bond has. I mean, they seem to have genuine affection for one another. Like, he's not just, I mean, they literally get to a point in this movie where he's going to be his father-in-law, and you're watching these emotional relationships develop between Bond and Drago and then Tracy, which we've never seen anything like this in a Bond movie.
No.
And then, of course, it sets up an incredibly tragic, sad ending that leaves literally James Bond weeping with a broken heart at the end of the film. That would never have been in any other Bond movie. And again, it's almost like it's all setting you up to completely deconstruct the character of Bond throughout the film, I think. And what's interesting now is you watch movies, the modern Bond films, I don't think they've been able to do that. They tried to do that with the whole Daniel Craig saga. Oh, I'm in love with Vesper, and I have a broken heart. You never really believe it, though, because their relationship develops so quickly, and then you're expected to believe while Bond is on this singular mission that he's going to meet this woman, fall in love with her, and she's going to break his heart and cause him to leave the service after he's become a 00. And it was fine. I love Casino Royale, but I never believed the emotional connection he had with her as much as I believe the connection he has with Tracy in this movie.
Well, that's because they rush things today instead of letting it build up, which they did in this film, because Vespa was this character who kind of comes in and she's more this background character and abrasive, and and so you're supposed to go, oh, they're fighting, so apparently they like each other secretly, and it's just done really rapidly, and then all of a sudden they're in a relationship and he's in love with her and got his ball sack smashed and she's stuck with him despite that disfigurement of his groin.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and they've had that whole relationship now carry over into 5 movies. I mean, it's going to even echo in No Time to Die. We see it in Quantum of Solace. It's brought up in Skyfall, and like this whole, which none of that has worked for me. As much as I like Casino Royale, and I'm a Quantum of Solace apologist, Skyfall and Spectre, this idea they've turned it into some weird Dark Knight riff with this Machiavellian Blofeld who's not really done anything yet. It's bizarre to me.
Yeah. And Dirty Monkey Soul says Tom should not watch Bond. He's clearly not a fan. Well, I wouldn't know. I haven't watched it yet. That's why I'm watching it, so I can
that's the whole
see
point,
if I'm a fan or not.
to see that, but that's kind of like the whole point with this whole experiment, because I've always said that movies, they will live forever, but some of them where entertainment value is concerned, other than as a historic document, have a use-by date. And I think that for quite a few movies, such as many of the old-timey James Bond movies, they have reached their use-by date. We're past the expiration date on many of them. The best way to find out is have someone that should like that kind of movie, but that has never seen them before, and see what he thinks about them now. And in Tom, we have the perfect case study, the perfect test bunny, as we call it in Norwegian, to see what does he like. Like, Tom is someone who, if you had grown up with these movies, you would have been a huge fan. But when you don't have that nostalgia, what does it do? You have like the same thing with me. I don't have any Star Wars nostalgia, so I don't really care about it. Same thing with China. That's why they can't get it to work there, no matter what they do, because they don't care. They didn't grow up with it.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree with everything you just said, and that's why for me, growing up with these Bond films since I was a little kid, and not only that, but when they were on in America, they all aired on ABC television, usually on Sunday nights. And it was a big event.
On the Sunday night ABC movie.
Yeah, I mean, you can see those bumpers on YouTube, and everybody watched Bond films. Like, you'd go to school. Like, I had a ritual where I had to beg my parents to stay up past my bedtime, like past 9 o'clock. And you'd get a movie like Thunderball that would play that in a 3-hour time block because it's a long movie. And every time a Bond movie was on, I had to beg my parents. And then you go to school the next day, and every kid in elementary school was talking about James Bond, and it was a big deal. But that
we all did that too. Yeah.
All
my friends.
It was a big deal, and again, we're talking almost 50 years ago, and then nowadays, I mean, I like you, Tom. I look back on these movies, and even I, like Andre, I recognize that the sell-by date has passed on a number of these films. And if you haven't seen them, I think it's very difficult, especially look, modern audiences today have a whole different experience of cinema than audiences of 40 and 50 years ago, because the technology has moved forward. So after MTV, cutting styles of movies changed. There's a lot more fast cutting. There's a lot more, once people realize that we can retain a lot more information than people thought we could retain, movies could move much faster. There was ways to it was easier for directors and filmmakers to convey information, and they just didn't know that. And the style of filmmaking over the last 40 years has significantly changed. And I think going back and looking at these movies that are especially supposed to be action films are very different experiences when you're coming off of watching something like Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, and Fallout, which is what the Bond movies should have evolved into, but haven't, unfortunately. Right. So
yeah, indeed.
Yeah, and Andrew wants to know what my favorite Bond film. Well, so far of the ones I've seen, because I've only seen the first 5 now. Probably the last 2 before this.
This would be the 6th.
Is this the 6th? Okay,
so Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, and You Only Live Twice. And this is the 6th.
liked You Only Live Twice and Thunderball probably the best, I think.
Yeah, I think that those two sound like your favorites
So
for
far.
sure. Yeah, it does absolutely sound like that. Yeah, but again, it's very interesting to, and that's something that I want to keep on doing on Thursdays. Is like just this to see how do things hold up, and when you expose someone that haven't seen a certain thing that everyone else has, how does it hold up when you watch it for the first time without nostalgia?
Yeah,
Right.
because there's other movies we're going to get into besides Bond eventually as well. Because unfortunately, Robert's, or fortunately for him anyway, he's a busy man and he can't join us every Thursday. So we know that's going to be days we're going to have to come up with some other ones. But yeah.
Well, it'd be interesting. I mean, I think about other franchises. Like, I grew up also loving the Planet of the Apes franchise, the first 5 Planet of the Apes movies. And it's very interesting because I've tried to show those movies to people. And of course, if you've seen the recent Planet of the Apes trilogy with Andy Serkis playing Caesar, starting with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I love that trilogy of movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not like Tim Burton's reimagining.
I don't think anybody did
at all. but growing up with those Planet of the Apes movies, like Bond, Planet of the Apes was a huge part of my childhood. Huge. And a lot of people now, you go back and there's people that they find the makeups unconvincing from the original Planet of the Apes films. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I love these makeups, but that's because I grew up with them. And now you've got CG photorealistic apes. It's hard to go back, and can people take it all very seriously? And I understand that, and I don't think they're wrong. Art changes throughout history, and things are a product of their time. And like Andre said, I do believe that movies have a sell-by date for audiences. And unfortunately, that's one of the problems I think we're going to have in our streaming era moving forward, is that as the years tick by, our cinematic legacy becomes less and less relevant to audiences because you have to train yourself to go back and watch older movies.
I think it's going to be a shift, though, because I think that movies that are from before the year 2000, they are going to continue to hold up. That's something you're going to have to train yourself in. But after the year 2000, because there you have a shift. Obviously in technology, because since then, even TV series and stuff like that is filmed in high definition. It's filmed natively in 180i, if not p. And also you have, like, because of HBO and OHMSS and everything like this in the end of the 90s, that kind of matured storytelling, certainly on TV, to a point where I don't feel that storytelling really has progressed much since the year 2000. I submit that if someone were to rewatch like high-end series from the early 2000s, like The Sopranos, The Shield, all those things which were filmed natively in 1080i, they're not going to be able to tell if that they were made now 20 years ago. They might as well have been made today. Fashion, everything is much the same. I think that those are going to have a much, much longer use-by date, or last for much, much longer than anything before. Because if you have something that's just like 5 years older, something from the mid-90s, it's going to be quaint because you didn't have HBO then. OHMSS hadn't happened yet. Which really caused like a maturing. So I think that it's going to be a huge before and after right there. I mean, just consider Battlestar Galactica. The remake series is now almost 20 years old. Yep. So we are now the same distance in time between the remake series as the remake series was from the original series.
Yep.
Or roughly about that point in time. Like,
I think
that
you
is
have
something
a point.
that should make you feel old, but that's how it is.
I think that'll only extend to things, though, that are probably primarily more in the sci-fi region. But I'm curious what you're about to say.
But that's a star example.
Well, mine is with my daughter Zoe, and she's 21 this year. and I raised her on good science fiction, good music, all that stuff. I really stuck into it, and I got her to watch Star Trek, and she fell in love with Kirk and Spock from the original series, except for one thing. She couldn't stand the original series. She loved the movies. And that's where she loved Kirk and Spock from. And, but I couldn't get her to sit down. She was just like, this is kind of hokey, Dad. I just can't get into this. And I'm like, oh, well, I at least won half the battle.
Well, it's like, I think with Star Trek, you're making a great point, because Star Trek is it looks very theatrical. Mm-hmm. It almost looks stage bound because there's nothing naturalistic about it. The lighting in the corridors of the Enterprise with the colored gels, and when they beam onto a planet, if they're not on location, it's clearly a set. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where, like, when people say it's hokey, I think in a way, it's true. I mean, part of, again, like with Bond, I was watching Star Trek incessantly as a kid. And when you go back and you look at it now, it's not contemporary in the least. And you have to train yourself to adjust. If you've only watched Star Trek, I mean, even the Next Generation, while it looks like it was shot on the set of a hotel, because that's how by design, it still has Star Trek The Next Generation feels of a piece. Like, you look at it and go, okay, this is just how it looks, because you're in the future. But Star Trek, the original series, not The Next Generation, looks very stage bound, and it's really hard.
Pop look to it too.
Yes, it's very hard to. And I'm sure that's why your daughter likes the movies, because, Star Trek
felt more real.
Yeah, they're on the streets of San Francisco. They're shooting on real locations, and I think, these movies, the Bond films now, like Tom, when we were talking about Dr. No,
right?
It seems like the movie was made in the 30s almost.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at it, it was made for contemporary audiences, but it doesn't feel at all contemporary when you look at it now. It doesn't,
exactly.
And it feels even older than it is.
We have another voice to
yes, we do.
To add to this. We also have Keith from Pop Culture Planet.
Oh,
how are
God,
you doing?
Damn it! You always ruin everything.
I'm sorry.
What kind of welcome was that?
I am so sorry, but you know how wounded I've been lately. But I didn't want to miss this. Talking about my favorite subject, Bond.
How are you, sir?
And oddly, I got to tell you, Keith and I have the same favorite James Bond movies. It's weird. No, we've talked about it. It's
yes,
really
we
weird.
have. Like, we share everything except women and underwear. So
occasionally underwear.
Oh God, geez, dude. Hi, everybody.
Hello, sir.
Greetings. What do you think of On Her Majesty's Secret Service? What's your memories of the movie, and how do you think it holds up today?
It is a film that my view of it has evolved over time. I grew up as someone that was always a big Connery fan. And to see George Lazenby in the role kind of threw me when I first saw him. That doesn't mean I didn't like it, but it definitely is a slightly different visual look and a slightly different tone, I've always thought, with that film. As I've gotten older, though, I've really come to love that film. I still think of it as a bit of an odd duck, because I think it was the first Bond film where you had any sense of a history of Bond with the opening credits. The way that when Lazenby's Bond at the beginning of the film begins to pull out different props and articles where they were able to play the various themes to remind you of things that have happened in the past. But I do love it. And Telly Savalas, geez, there's nobody like Telly Savalas. But really what it all comes down to is meeting his match, meeting Tracy. To me, the perfect match for who Bond was at that time. Still, in my mind, the best match he's ever had. That entire film, though, is a feast for the eyes, and seemingly has everything you could ever want in a Bond film. Is it my all-time favorite? No, but I still enjoy it. So it holds up in my mind very well.
I think what you brought up, what you just mentioned, though, it has emotion. And as you get older, when you're a kid, you don't care about people falling in love. You don't care about relationships between Bond and his potential father-in-law. None of that matters to you. You know, I want action. I want exotic locales, hot women, cool cars, gadgets. But as you get older, this film has something that the Bond films don't, and that is interpersonal relationships with people.
Yes.
And so I think as you get older, you appreciate that aspect of the film because it's a big aspect of the movie. And even Blofeld's relationship with Bond has more meat to it, more emotional meat to it than other relationships. The Blofeld might as well be a robot or an android. It's an evil AI.
They clearly were gearing this towards a date film, getting women into the theater to see it. Not just because the star was good looking, but because there was romance.
Yeah,
and
it's real romance. It's not just forced. The whole story hinges on that.
Yeah. So I think that was, probably a very clever move on Cubby's part to push towards doing a romantic James Bond film.
Yes, and again, I have to say, I think you really did hit the nail on the head, Robert. It's romance, and when you discover girls, you begin to see some of the complexities of that angle with a lot of films that you had probably watched with different eyes before you discovered girls.
Yeah.
So, that's exactly it. It's the romance, and there is a deep romance within that film, unlike all the other Bond films, and it is that which kind of sets it apart, and it makes the heartache at the very end. That could have been a very different kind of movie had they held on to that scene longer. But the way that they ended it.
Oh, with his, I think they came close to it with Timothy Dalton's Living Daylights. There was a lot of romance in that. I think that was the one film that I felt like they had expanded again to try to introduce an actual love interest.
Well, as you get further into the books, the novels, that becomes something that gets echoed a little bit, as Bond's.
You're talking about the continued books, not.
Yeah, the books, the actual continued books that. Well, I should say Ian Fleming's work. I should say, because there is an evolution for Bond within those books. There is a subtext to all of this stuff that I think is something that is hinted at and placed into the current movies that we're seeing. But there's no real point, to make to where you're telling the audience this is important. In the books, you begin to see that Bond begins to have an opinion. And the way he looks on his job and the people that he works for begins to take he begins to express himself more. Almost like that of a teenager when they start to get their own thoughts and feelings and they begin to talk back to mom and dad a little bit. You get that feeling with the Bond books that Bond has a it's not that he doesn't want to do what he's doing, but he begins to express what he actually thinks. And it's not always something that is welcomed by his bosses. It's definitely not something that M wants to hear sometimes. That's what I really enjoyed about the novels, and I think that's the reason why, in my opinion, Timothy Dalton really is the four-quadrant Bond in that respect. It shows why he had the feelings about the character that he did, and why he kept telling Cubby that they had really kind of missed that a little bit, and that in doing what they had done with all the other films leading up to that, where you were cannibalizing action sequences from one particular story to place into another story to help jazz it up, and how you were really just sabotaging your future.
the Bond films are replete with that. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, because like once we got to the 80s with Gardner, I mean, did you read any of Gardner's books, Robert?
Yeah, I did.
What did you think of those books?
I liked a lot of them. You know, I thought they were interesting, but they weren't. You know, again, they were. I liked them. You know, because I liked James Bond. I mean, what was it? Was it License Renewed? Was the first one he wrote?
I love
so. I mean, yeah, and when I really enjoy that. I mean, I thought when you got to things like Broken Claw, I'm like, you know, it got a little tired. But you know, for special services, and at first, to me, Broken Claw was not the good name of a Bond book. You know, and I'm like, he's running out of steam. You know, License Renewed and For Special Services and all that. Those are cool Bond titles, but
and they were an older, more mature Bond too.
Yes,
and that's why I kind of dug it.
But I think what ultimately is interesting is that the James Bond character, as conceived and executed by Fleming, he was part of a very particular point in history. You know, he's a Cold War character that was working within that framework and moving. Like, I think one of the big problems when you move Bond out of, and even the films had, especially that, to me, James Bond is a product of the 1960s. I know the books were in the 50s, but
the Frank Sinatra era.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's your swinging Hepcat, Ocean's 11, the original Ocean's 11, the Rat Pack, all of that Playboy Vegas. I mean, that's what the movies did. That's what they, and people forget that the audiences that these movies were made for, even though Dr. No debuted in 62, you still had audiences that basically they all came back from World War II. World War II decimates the planet, and the rise of the middle class in America and around the world. And now you have basically a bunch of people that had created, they'd come home and feathered their nests. Their kids were teenagers now, and it was wish fulfillment. But barely anybody had been on intercontinental jetliner trips, you know, much less had passports. I mean, so these films were ways that the culture of the early 60s, especially because even Bond, as culture shifted with the civil rights movement and the women's movement, everything that was going on, the tumultuous nature of the protest movement because of the Vietnam War, the world changed underneath the Bond films. And then by the time you get to the 70s, the Bond movies are almost irrelevant. They're playing catch up. And so, blaxploitation movies are big now. So let's make a Bond blaxploitation movie and Live and Let Die. And wait, now it's martial arts movies. So let's go to Asia, and Man with the Golden Gun becomes. So no longer were Bond films trendsetters. They were following trends, trying to appeal to young people and younger audiences. And then by the time you get to, as much as I love Spy Who Loved Me, it was a total fantasy, you know, and it had left it like kind of the 70s, the late 70s were the fantasy era. I mean, Spy Who Loved Me came out right after Star Wars had come out. And then by the time you get to the 80s, Bond movies they were just standard action movies. And there was as much as I like them,
became with License to Kill in particular became a more grounded, darker version to get away from that light feeling of Bond with the cheeky humor, you know. And you got a version with Dalton that didn't crack jokes, and instead deals with a mobster.
Right, but then again, it felt like you're looking at a Miami Vice episode.
Well,
it wasn't even. You know, and
really
they shot it all in Mexico, so they kept the price down, and it was definitely a change up of the formula. I don't think it really worked though.
No, it failed, and which is why they went lighter with the next film.
You know what? The other thing though about License to Kill is that original short story was part of that whole, you know, latter half of Bond's development that Ian Fleming was going through. The sort of darker Bond.
Yeah.
Where I think had Ian Fleming lived, I don't think Bond would have had an easier time of it going forward. I don't know if he would have stayed in the service. I think he would have moved beyond that. And that would have evolved just a little bit. But I've always seen the literary version of Bond as more of a world-traveling version of Mike Hammer in certain ways.
Right.
He was able to, because a lot of the stuff that he did was more about solving problems, solving cases, and also fighting the bad guys at the same time. I have found that, and again, you're right, Robert. When you're dealing with the generation of that audience that were coming out of World War II and the wish fulfillment initially of that era and what Bond covered, I also like to think that it was again more of a male fantasy, in so much as that you had a lot of men that were starting families and married and getting into, going to work, coming home, that whole 9 to 5 thing.
Yeah.
And this was sort of like a fantasy for it's something that everybody could read and enjoy, but more of a male fantasy, more of that rat pack, but also Playboy.
Oh, no.
And
we always talk about this, which is, what made cinema even a thing was during the Depression, escapism, and so it's just another version of escapism. I mean, even reading a James Bond book back in the late 1950s, early 60s, that was a form of escapism, and Bond is always going to be that. Then when they try to make him not that is when it's going to fail.
Yeah. And again, I'm still of the belief that if you wanted to go ahead and have Bond stories where he's a little bit older, like what John Gardner was writing, you could do that.
You talked about that before, because I liked Keith's idea is that they should work out a deal with Netflix and do an ongoing series of the Guy Gardner books, is short films on Netflix.
Yeah, especially Icebreaker.
Yeah, I like that. Well, Amazon, I think they should go back, and if I was in charge of the Bond franchise, I would readapt all the books and set them in the time they were written.
Exactly.
The 1950s.
I would love that.
Hearing too, like set it in the 60s.
Yeah.
Do a fresh adaptation. Do it like a high-end TV series. Do it that way. Do it justice. Get the Blofeld story right.
Yeah.
Because this is something that we haven't really touched on so much yet. Because taking it back to this particular movie, we're not going to spoil anything, but up until this point, like, this is honestly like the Blofeld saga at its heights, and it's kind of like downhill a little bit from here, isn't it? Just the adaptation of Blofeld compared to the original source material and its importance on the franchise.
Yeah, and then yes, absolutely. I also think a big problem with the Bond franchise as it has been is that the world, I mean, before you had these megalomaniacs that could also be somewhat attractive because they're living in the evil villains that we now have in the modern day are living in caves in Tora Bora, planning on flying jets into buildings, and yet they're not.
Those are actually the bad guys of yesterday. I think that there's other bad guys to worry about right now. But
right, but I mean, we've seen that those bad guys, they're not the captains of industry that are commanding. They're just not. They don't. It's like when the Russian mafia came to America. When the wall fell and the Russian mafia came to America, they were so used to grifting. They were pulling insurance scams. They were doing all this shit. And then they realized, gosh, in the West, there's far more money to be made legitimately because these businesses are set up to make sure that we make the most maximum profits possible by screwing over the little guy. So why are we bothering to pull off these insurance scams when we can go and sell subprime mortgages and make a lot more money? And I think one of the big problems with the Bond franchise is the whole Jean Le Carré spy thriller, Smiley's People. That era is gone. And that's why it's hard. Like, they're struggling to find villains for these Bond films that are, when you've got the richest men in the world, Blofeld, I mean, Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, I mean, these would have been Bond villains, but they're not anymore. Now they're there are heroes that are building the future, and it's like Jeff Bezos.
Elon Musk in particular would be a perfect Bond villain.
Yeah, I mean, he's like Christopher Walken in A View to a Kill, with his Tesla cars and all that craziness, Silicon Valley. But you look at these people, like, what's Bond going to do? Everyone's getting rich. Everybody's happy as long as your share price is high. I mean, what are these guys going to? They don't want to destroy the world anymore because it's the world that's bringing them all their money. You don't have to bribe. Well, we want $10 million for these nuclear weapons now. Well, what? I'm worth $160 billion. There's never been anybody in history that's worth as much as I am, and I'm the most high-profile individual. I'm building rockets. I just bought MGM. Why do you want to take me down? And no one does. So what's Bond supposed to do? And you don't want to have Bond fighting, a fundamentalist terrorists that are in Afghanistan. I mean, I was just reading an article about how the Afghan military was surrendering to the Taliban. So now we're back to the living daylights.
Oh yeah.
And it's such a weird world that we live in. I really don't know if there's a place for James Bond in the world today. And I think as we move along, we see it's going to be really interesting to watch No Time to Die and see what they do with that character, who's now supposed to be older and retired. I really can't wait to see what happens.
I think there's a place for Bond in so much as acting out, or at least in conveying that part of the story of a man who's really noticing his mortality and the effect that he has had on the world. Bond is an interesting character in that he can actually look back and see things and see the effect that he's had. And that also dips into what I think Ian Fleming was trying to get to with Bond towards the end of his run with the character, where Bond was starting to realize, hey, ask the questions of, am I really doing any good here? What is the end all be all effect of everything I've gone to? Risking my life, my body, seeing friends die, seeing people that I fought against, then I have to work beside so much, like even 5 years later. I mean, what is all of this? And I think you could do that. I think that would be very interesting if you were to end it that way, because having the life that he's had up to this point, it almost really is about reality, at least from a male perspective. The initial stories and all the glitz and the glamour, kind of like Harry Potter in a sense, how when the first story started, there's all this fantasy and everything's magical. But as the story goes along, as the characters get older, you begin to see that world for what it is. And I think the same thing can be done with Bond, to be able to see the world for how it truly is. And he has to make a decision. Do I still want to do this? Can I play a part in this? What am I ultimately trying to achieve for myself in this life?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, and different ways of doing it. But we actually have gotten in quite a few super chats with some questions and comments. So before we move on, let us get into that. Dash D's, he has a couple of questions here. So I just want to real quick your thoughts on this. What do you all think is more important, a good Bond or a good 007? Can a good 007 carry the series, or a bad Bond would be more effective? I'm not quite sure exactly what it is you were asking there.
Well, I think
good Bond versus good 007. You mean like good actor or good how?
I think, well, if you're talking about like the character himself as Bond, or like just getting somebody else in as a 007, I think we're going to see that in the new movie. But I think James Bond is the series. I don't think you can do it without James Bond. That's just me, though. What about you guys, Keith?
No, it's James Bond or nobody.
Gary, I didn't know you were Keith. No,
we answer for each other. That's what happens with couples.
Oh God! You know what? I agree, Tom. It started with Bond. It would be hard to go beyond Bond. I could see it going like that if Ian Fleming had set it up to do that eventually. there's a lot of interesting characters, but for the most part, it's all Bond. That's how I got in. That's what drew me in. In many ways, kind of like growing up watching Captain Kirk on Star Trek, Bond taught a lot of us how to be men, you know, or at least that male fantasy, how to approach your work and how to approach play. Two very important things. So, yeah, I agree with you, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you as well. You know, I just think that what's interesting to me is that moving forward, I think the Daniel Craig Bond films have had a real identity crisis. And, you know, you see in Casino Royale where he becomes a 00. It's essentially the very first Bond outing. And then Quantum of Solace continues that. And then when you get to Skyfall, the third movie, apparently he's had an entire career and he's old now. And you never actually saw Daniel Craig go out on a Bond mission. You know, he never they never made a typical Bond movie with Daniel Craig. I guess you could say the Casino Royale was that way, but he was a newly minted Bond. He was a newly minted 00. So we never actually got to watch Daniel Craig go off on a mission where he was assigned. There was something happening and he had to overcome whatever it was he had to overcome. And all they've done is, well, in Skyfall and Spectre, was deal with his angst as a character. Like, what do I mean now? Where am I in the world? And I'm like, I don't know if the Bond franchise, it's always interesting to deconstruct a character. Like, you get to have Clint Eastwood was in 30 Westerns before you did Unforgiven, but you really only needed one Unforgiven. That told you everything you need to know. Logan, you know, we've got Logan. We understand where Wolverine was. It's great. But the character of Bond, I think, I don't know if a character like James Bond belongs here with us in the modern world. And I think they struggle now, and they've been struggling for 30 years to make a great Bond movie work within the context of the time that we live in now. Hell, 40 years, you know, since For Your Eyes Only in 81.
It worked better in a Cold War era.
Yeah, absolutely. Because also the villains, the people, the way you did business, there was even a code amongst spies, and they all knew each other, you know, and the people on either side knew each other. They knew what they were doing. They knew they were part of a much bigger game and politics. And then, like, in the 70s, there's a reason why they created, well, both Hugo Drax and Carl Stromberg. I want to kill every human being on the earth, and I want to make my perfect people be the new progeny that's going to create the master race. And, like, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. What, you're going to have 40 people in the world living with you at the bottom of the sea or in space until you repopulate the earth? I mean, I don't know if that's really constructive, but that's where we were at. And now what threat do you throw? What is James Bond supposed to stop? Whereas, like, I liked what they did in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation and Fallout. You had these rogue agents, and, like, the idea of some men just want to watch the world burn. That's why they copied The Dark Knight for Skyfall. They tried to turn Silva into basically a chaos bringer, but it didn't really work because I didn't buy it. I didn't buy that he didn't know he was going to go to London, yet apparently his operatives they can
had everything planned and mapped out.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, man. And yeah.
And that brings us to the irony of the whole thing. I remember when you had remarked earlier, Robert, about the 1970s and the changing Bond character and the adventures. You know, that was also the early 1970s was when and where Denny O'Neil got the idea to make Batman like that. I mean, his Batman, along with Neil Adams, that was a Batman that was really came out of the Bond experience,
right?
And was more of a Bond type at a time when really that was necessary for Batman to do in order to survive coming out of the 60s post.
Well, they brought him back to being a detective.
Yes, but added an international flair. If you really wanted to explore, though, the kind of questions that they're trying to do with Bond, with Craig, it would be easier for Netflix to adapt the Matt Helm series of books, because there's an aspect of the character that I don't think they've ever really attempted, because, you know, the films were more predicated on trying to turn him into a James Bond type. And Matt Helm really isn't the same. Matt Helms has a very straightforward job. His job is to kill enemy spies, usually ones that find their way into the United States. That is his only job. And I think you could have a character like that could survive in almost any decade because that's a very simple mandate and a very simple job. And if you wanted to hang kind of an angsty sort of look on that, you could do that very easily with Matt Helm. Not so much with James Bond, but
right. Plus, I mean, again, when you've gone into space and you've gone to the top of Piz Gloria and you've gone to the bottom of the ocean with your submarine car, how do you make the Bond character work today when also in the movie-going milieu, we've got Bourne, we've got Ethan Hunt, we've got John Wick, and now we've got nobody. You know, Bob Odenkirk now kicks ass. So how do you then make an audience embrace James Bond today? And I've often said, like, I mean, obviously with the MGM sale, maybe the Broccoli family, maybe Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli will finally sell their interest in Bond and call it a day. Because I think ending with Daniel Craig's tenure, they've had a great run. I mean, Michael Wilson's in his late 70s, I think now, and Barbara Broccoli's getting up there. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life doing these movies and coming up with something new? And if they're going to recast the role, you're still left with coming out with another one of these stories. I don't know how you make it. How do you make it better than a Mission Impossible movie?
Well, you got. I think.
Go ahead.
I was just say, I think, and this is just coming from my point of view, from everything I've heard you guys say and the conversations we have, is you got to take Bond back to its roots, be it just either the character himself or go ahead and take him back to the 60s. Do like a, situation where you just kind of revamp, redo, and, everybody wants Henry Cavill or somebody like him to kind of take on the role. He's more of the classic look Bond. That's what you got to do, is just kind of make it the classic style and embrace everything that Bond is about. I believe that's the only way I think you can reinvigorate it. Because at this point, I've heard you say it now, Robert, they have gone about 3 shades away from what Bond originally was now. And this movie that we're talking about now is the first of that. And then it sounds like License to Kill is the next time down the road. And then when the Daniel Craig Bond comes in, I'm sure that's the 4th or 5th time, because if I remember right, when they brought in Pierce Brosnan, that's when they kind of took it back to more of the fun Bond. So like I see the bouncing back and forth here, and I think that's what we need, is to kind of, and that's just my opinion, is to kind of get it back more to the fun 60s kind of Bond where he's having fun and he's banging chicks and blowing shit up.
Yeah, but I don't know if audiences today would buy into that. Like we got to see Henry Cavill as Napoleon Solo in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., a movie I really liked. I thought seeing Ilya Kuryakin and Napoleon Solo, I loved Man from U.N.C.L.E. growing up because obviously it was a Bond riff, but it didn't. I don't know if people like, you can do something like The Queen's Gambit, which is a period piece, so you can do The Crown.
I don't know how many people that are of the modern day movie-going audience, as in those that actually go see movies at the box office rather than wait for the DVD or streaming or whatever. I don't know how many of those grew up with The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I don't know how many of those were looking forward to it. I think that was the big issue for it. If it had been scaled for streaming, it would have been a huge success. But it was scaled to be a box office movie, and I think they simply misunderstood their audience. I do not think there was demand for it.
Well, also, you've got young people now that are having less sex than ever, and if you were to make a Mad Men-esque Bond, where Bond was unrepentantly shagging ladies back in the early Bond films, and the way that women responded to him, I don't know how you go back to the 60s and offer a portrayal. I think you're going to alienate, as much as I think they should do that. I mean, I just said, go back, and I just don't know if modern audiences want to go back to that era where, let's just say, it wasn't very politically correct.
Oh yeah, all modern audience, they were so offended by Game of Thrones and all the nudity and sex in that one. I think we'll be fine with that.
well, no, but it's not that. It's the attitude. When Bond is slapping girls on the ass, I mean, it would be weird to see them adjust Bond's character. Like I've always said, Bond, the reason that he's a sensualist, he drinks, he smokes, he unrepentantly sleeps with women, is because every single day could be the last day on this planet for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows that he's going to indulge in those sensual pleasures because that's his reward for doing the work that he does. And I don't know if audiences can even grasp that concept today.
Well, why does he have to be that way? I just don't think that
it's decidedly the least woke you can possibly be. And I wonder if people would buy into that. Like, look, I love Mad Men. Don Draper was a hero. Even though, for me to say that, I mean, God, you're not. I mean, I say that sort of ironically, but yet, I mean, I'm like Don Draper. I want to be he was a great ad man. He could drink all he wanted. He slept with everybody in town. I mean, what's not to love? He dressed in great suits.
Back when there was wet bars at work.
Oh my God. I'm like, I want to be that guy. Of course, maybe not cheat on my wife as much and ruin my kids' lives, but still, I look at Mad Men as wish fulfillment.
Well, I guess that's what you could also look on with something, and I know I keep bringing it up, but I guess you could look on that a little bit as to where you could take someone like a Matt Helm. You could understand that his job was all about killing. Bond had the option to kill. He's a spy, but there is always that option. Matt Helm's only job is to kill. He's an assassin for the United States. And all he does is kill other spies that have come into the United States. He has no jurisdiction outside the United States. That is his job.
Yeah. Also, on that note, we have a couple of more questions here. So I'm going to leave you with the next one. Before then, Johnny Succo sent us $5 with no message. And then he sent us another $5 with message saying, "Thanks, Rob, for just being a fan. You're a fan of Stripe Down Bond then, for Your Eyes Only, or even to a certain extent License to Kill or Skyfall."
Am I a fan of those movies? Is that?
Yeah, what he said was, so you are a fan of stripped down Bond then?
Well,
for Your Eyes
yeah.
Only, or even to a certain extent License to Kill or Skyfall?
Well, I think I'm just a fan of great Bond stories. And, I really liked For Your Eyes Only, the idea that, when he says to Marina Havelock, before seeking revenge, you must first dig two graves. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. And the idea that they're going after, again, it felt like a throwback. They're going after for another decoding device, another MacGuffin, the ATAC system that lets them chart the course of whatever I forget what the actual device did, but the Russians want it. The British have to get it. And, I like the stripped down nature of it. There's a lot of goofiness in there, but you've got like a Cuban assassin, you've got henchmen, and then the Russians are the villains, General Gogol, and I liked all that. But it might have been stripped down, but it still felt very international. It was globe-trotting. It has some of the best, if not the best, skiing in the whole movie because there's very little rear screen projection in it, and there's incredible photography. Bill Conti's crazy weird. It sounds like ABC Sports score, and weird music. But I Sheena Easton, there's a love. I liked all that. But the thing about like on the flip side, License to Kill for me felt a little Miami Vice. It's Franz Sanchez. He's shipping cocaine and gasoline, and you literally have a chase with 18-wheeler trucks and Wayne Newton. Two great Bond girls, though. Talisa Soto, my God, Talisa Soto and Carrie Lowell, what lovely ladies they were. But they were capable, strong women, which I liked. I like stronger Bond girls that have that are not so demure. They can kick ass. I've always liked that about the franchise. But Skyfall to me, I totally didn't like at all because it was nonsensical, and I thought it's funny for me to say this, deeply misogynistic. I thought the Skyfall was unbelievably misogynistic. They allow a woman to die and Bond treats it as a joke. One of the most beautiful women I think I've ever seen. And you find out she was basically a sex slave at 12, and she asks Bond for help, but instead, no, let me just come into your house, take you into the shower, and then, watch you die in a horrible way. I didn't like that.
Hold that thought, because that's another question. Before then, Darius Münchhausen and Mr. Tickletrunk both sent us popcorn super stickers. Thanks for that. And Dash D says, I love the way after Bond took down Drago, how he got his life back together and fought Rocky for the belt. A real hero's journey. And then, as to your most recent comment, Dash D's also said, second question for you. Other than the best Bond girl, and which was the sexiest? You all on the panel get to choose one Bond girl. Who's your favorite Bond girl overall?
I've already got mine. I'll wait though.
Yeah, well, Gary, let's begin with you since you already have it. You don't have to think.
Oh, it's easy. Ursula Andress.
Dude.
When she came out of that water, yeah. I went from age 7 to adult.
From the reaction, I think that you answered on behalf of Keith as well.
I got another one. Tracy.
Oh, I thought you were going to
Tracy
go for
Bond.
Carrie Hatcher for a second.
Tracy Bond. She was and it still is his perfect match.
Secretly an appeal.
As a character, yeah. If she had lived, just think about what their lives would have been like. It would have been like the Addams Family for spies, given the way that they couldn't keep their hands off of each other. I mean, their relationship would have been something.
Tom, how about you? Of course, you only have like 6 to choose from, but or like 6 movies to choose from. But which one stands out to you in the 6 movies you've seen so far?
Easy answer, Geeky Pixie.
Okay,
Okay, I got one laugh. Okay. Shit. Contessa is probably one of the more
Tracy,
yeah, so far that out of all the films, she was probably the standout part of this film, and I do like the fact that he got a playground to play in, and that whole kind of like they're insinuating that, because the whole thing was I loved about this movie was I got the joke was all the girls are there because they have some kind of allergy, and I kept loving how they were pointing out, well, we know what his allergy is, and they hint at it that he's gay basically. Or playing gay, should we say, obviously. And that's the whole joke, because Bond knows what he's up to, obviously. But
right,
but her just being a part of that, and when the way the film ended, even though I seen it coming from a mile away, it kind of pissed me off. It really did. I thought it was kind of cheap. I hope it. I think it pays off in the next films later down the road. But at the same time, I'm just kind of like, that was kind of lame. You really pulled that. They could have saved that for the beginning of another film.
Exactly.
Or they were actually going to.
Yeah, exactly.
The death was going to be at the beginning of Diamonds Are Forever, but when Lazenby was going to come back, they changed those plans.
Yeah, I wish they had done that.
But yeah, she had, obviously, to this point, she's had the most time, the most character, and stood out the most.
As for me, my first go-to would be Ursula Andress, but since that was taken already, I'll go with the one that I grew up with. Like the first Bond movie I saw in a cinema, the one that affected me the most for that reason, because it was the most visceral experience, was GoldenEye. So I'm going to go with Isabella Scorupco.
Oh, all right. I guess that leaves me. I'm going to have to go with Anya Masova, Agent Triple X, played by Ringo Starr's wife, Barbara Bach. I mean, not only was she just smoky and sultry and sexy, she was the British Bond. And even though, the Russian Bond, she was almost Bond. She was Bond's equal. And I loved that. And as a kid, The Spy Who Loved Me was the first Bond film I saw in the theater. And there two of, like, first of all, seeing Caroline Munro as Naomi, who, she wasn't a primary Bond girl, but oh my God, do I love Caroline Munro. And of course, she dies. She dies in a helicopter after being shot down by the Lotus Esprit from under the water. But Triple X, man, she's the stuff.
All right, let's go to least favorite.
Yeah, no, we have a few more super chats to go through as well. But Paulie makes also his opinion known that it's Maud.
And Script Doctor agrees with Robert.
Yeah. And then we have Johnny Succo also says for $10. Also, it seems like it took Daniel Craig for people to appreciate License to Kill. And he also says Barbara Broccoli herself said Timothy Dalton was ahead of the time. She was right. And finally, he says for another $10, damn it, Rob, my dad showed me the Planet of the Apes movies on Cinemax when I was 10. Same with the Bond films. We see them in theaters to this day.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing that we talked about, the nostalgia effect, where kids who grew up with them tend to like them into adulthood and introduce them to their own kids later on. And that's how a lot of this thing continues going.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah. And then we have Patrick Mulligan just wants everyone to remember From Russia is still the best Bond film.
I did enjoy that one quite a bit, but
I don't think it's the best for me, but I love it.
It's the closest to the books, I think. It most represents Fleming's work.
And Shaw is a great villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did really enjoy his performance for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this says for $5, Amazon now owns both Stargate and RoboCop, both long-dead franchises. Both Stargate Universe and RoboCop 3 killed those franchises long time ago. Well, Stargate, at the very least, is about to be brought back from the dead and killed again, much, much worse, by the very last people that you would want to have involved with it. At least that's the rumor that we have heard. So, yeah,
no.
that is no cure.
Yeah, that recent web series was terrible.
And then, Robert, we have your good friend Terje Tiberius Mørk, who says for 100 Norwegian krona, not only is On Her Majesty's Secret Service the best Bond movie, Lazenby was the best Bond. Handsome, funny, and believable. I was born in 1982 and didn't really grow up with any specific Bond. My deep love for On Her Majesty's Secret Service is pure. There you go. My fellow countryman is a big fan of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Actually, there's many people in Norway that have that as kind of like their favorite, apart from the whole Lazenby thing. But he has his fans too. So I don't know if it's a Norwegian thing, but I've heard many others express sentiments similar to what Terje is doing here.
And I guess that's a defense for what I mean, at least my feelings on the matter, because I'm already well aware that there's, quite a few Bonds to get through and different people play the part. So it's not like I was able to sit there and go, oh, well, of course, Sean Connery will always be James Bond. And I didn't even have years to
I assure you, you are not going to have the same reaction to Roger Moore as you did last.
I'm sure I'm going to like some of the other Bonds. I already have an idea of which ones I might like more, just because I know a lot of these actors from other things as well. So anyway, Keith, it looked like you were going to say something there. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, for me, I think if there is one thing that truly stands out that makes On Her Majesty's Secret Service truly different, it's the only Bond film to take place during a major holiday, and this it's Christmas.
True.
And for a long time it was a Christmas movie for me. I would always try to watch.
These movies always released
you and I
at
talked
Christmas
about that before. Yeah.
In the UK.
Were they released? Is that
that's what I just said. Yeah.
Robert, you probably know better than us.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Weren't these movies always released at Christmas time in the UK anyway? Because isn't that their major
I think so. You know, they were. Yeah, I think they started out as holiday movies, and then they moved to the summer
when summer became a thing. Yeah.
But when I went and saw, like, I flew to London just to go see Skyfall.
Yeah. And Jaws is the one that changed it to summer.
Yeah, and
that
you
was
saw
in November. And you saw it with Terje, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
He and Julie came down, and Charlie de Lazarica, he came out too.
Wow, you got to see with Charlie? That's cool.
Yeah. So Charlie flew to London, and then Terje came down from Norway, and then my friend Emma, who already lived in the UK, she showed up, and we all went to the Odeon Cinema in Leicester Square, and that was a lot of fun.
We're gonna continue the Norwegian invasion a little bit because Natasha says in fluent Norwegian, "Jeg liker Lazenby." I'll let you all just imagine what that means, but it shouldn't be too difficult. And, I would think. And Luffy is God says that's because Norwegians have good taste. Lazenby is number one. And also my fellow Norwegian Paulus Plain sends 100 Norwegian krona saying Elon Musk bought the James Bond submarine car. P.S. The sub car was inspiration for the Cybertruck.
Again, he is a Bond villain.
Yeah, that
he just doesn't know it yet, or what?
Bond car of all time, but we're gonna get back.
There's no real Bond to stop him. That's
when we get there.
Is he like Mr. Glass and he just hasn't realized that he's the bad guy yet?
Yeah, he just has no clue he's the villain.
Yeah, and on top of that, that's what Amber Heard is for. She's his.
She's the femme fatale,
and taking things back on.
She's
track.
The mastermind. Shit.
The Norwegian invasion continues with Terje Tiberius Mørk, who wonders what movie had the best pre-credit scene.
Well, that's a tough one.
That is tough.
I've seen so far. Boy.
I got to be honest. My personal favorite intro was the Pierce Brosnan movie with the oil rigs at the beginning. I forget.
The world is not enough.
That one. I love that intro animation. It was just wow.
The boat chase too. That's the longest. Apparently, up until No Time to Die, which has the longest apparently pre-credit sequence. That boat chase across the Thames is amazing.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, the best opening for any of the Bond films for me, again, Pierce Brosnan, the North Korean.
I agree. I was just thinking that.
The rest of the movie not as good.
But the movie is horrendous, but I agree with you.
Terrible.
That opening is perfect because
fantastic.
It's a time lapse sequence where he's actually in captivity, and you go through what happens to him, and that's the opening sequence. Yeah, to me, that's the best opening sequence of any Bond movie. Period. Shame about the rest of the movie.
Well, finally, you and I agree on something, Andre.
Yeah.
Now, one of the guys, the next guy, M. Howden, asked the question, which I think is something we have not addressed yet, which is Lazenby did deserve more than one movie, and he did, and would have gotten it if he hadn't done one thing. You guys know what it is?
I don't remember. It's been a while since I saw that documentary.
He kept the beard, and he was told by Cubby and what's his name, his partner, Saltzman.
Albert.
Yeah,
Harry, I'm sorry.
Harry Saltzman. He told him shave the beard before you show up to the premiere, and he showed up to the premiere. With the beard, and that got him fired. They were pissed.
Yeah, I could see that.
Let me just at least officially say for the record, my favorite opening is Quantum of Solace, mainly because it creates a second part from how you ended the last movie. So you're talking moments. It's an instantaneous thing, and so it to me it had my attention immediately. Once you realize,
I can see where it has gravitas in that way.
Yeah,
but it kind of threw me off because it's the only film to really do that, and it was, I don't know, it's weird because you're so used to the way they do things. It's this cookie cutter way of making James Bond films. opens on what happened in the last film, opens on what happened in some other film, you know, and it's its own little story that opens in, and then you get the cool animated, like Maurice Binder's beginnings were just amazing. I mean, I don't know how you guys felt about it, but I was in love with the way Maurice Binder did the openings for Bond. And,
Yes.
you know, women, I mean, as a kid, that was the only way I could see a nude woman without my dad beating my ass. And he would slip them in there, and I'm like, oh my God. But
but
you didn't get that with that.
Binder's opening sequences was literally like watching one of the book covers come to life.
Yeah.
That's what really those sequences were like. It's like, hey, we're going to open the book now, but look, it moves, and there's women and guns and more women.
Everything that Bond was about.
Yeah, pretty much. And
what was it? The I forget their name again. Frank Sinatra's gang, the Rat Pack.
Yeah.
You know, and I wasn't surprised to find out that it was Kennedy's favorite book.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think oh, go ahead.
Yeah, because no, sorry, carry on. Your favorite, and then we will next super chat. What's your favorite first, Robert?
It has to be Spy Who Loved Me, because, you know, again, I loved skiing, and Bond it starts out with shenanigans happening, and then Bond getting called, and he's in bed with a beautiful, probably Norwegian woman. And she turns out to be a spy, alerts the Russians that he's coming, and there's a great ski sequence, and he skis off the mountain. You know, and I don't think I'd seen the trailer for Spy Who Loved Me, and when that happened, and then the Union Jack opens, and
I read somewhere that that is the British voted one of the favorite openings for the film for the British.
Yeah, and hearing that song, I mean, it's not jazzy, but you know, the lyrics, nobody does it better, makes me feel sad for the rest. Nobody does it quite as good as you, baby. You're the best. I'm like, hell yeah. All right. I'm 10 years old. Give me my Bond. It was amazing.
Amen.
But I do think my favorite opening credit sequence was when Daniel Kleinman took over for GoldenEye. That opening sequence, and then he went on and did the Pierce Brosnan Bonds, and he only missed one since then, which was Quantum of Solace. And his opening credit sequences are amazing.
Yeah, and as I recall, GoldenEye was the last one that the visual effects guy, miniature effects guy, worked on.
Derek Meddings, that's
Derek
correct.
Meddings, yeah.
He passed away. Indeed.
All right. Well, Andre, I know there's a few more super chats to get through, and we got a few other things we wanted to discuss real quick. But yeah, what's the next super chat?
Yeah, that's
I haven't seen enough of them. I'm not going to pick an opening because so far they've all been pretty similar. So
yeah, no, I think it's too early for you to make that call just yet. Patrick Mulligan says for $5 Canadian, he has a message for you, Robert. You made a mistake in the Alien podcast with Drinker. The crew does have weapons and guns. They cannot shoot the alien on a ship due to acid blood.
Well, Parker
what
does.
A mistake to make up.
I mean, Parker does say it has in the movie. He says it has a wonderful defense mechanism. You don't dare kill it. But I don't believe they show firearms in the movie. I don't know if that's ever established. I know that in the astronaut suits, they've got a gun-like weapon, but I don't know if those are grappling guns or what. But I don't know if they ever show firearms in the movie. So that might be true, but you know, burning the alien up could have caused the same thing to happen. So I mean, they never really have a scene in the movie where they address. But Parker does say that that's his quote. It has a wonderful defense mechanism. You don't dare kill it.
And what they have, I'm assuming, it'd probably be really low level since they're just basically truckers. So I don't.
Yeah, that's all. They're space truckers.
Yeah,
that's exactly what they are.
Yeah,
but I mean, maybe that's a mistake. I wouldn't necessarily say it was, but
he's holding you to the fire, though, Robert.
I know. I'll accept that. I accept that criticism. It's an astute I mean, maybe in Alan Dean Foster's novelization, they directly address something like that. But
well, moving on, we can all make mistakes. So yeah, on the bigger scheme of things, I don't think that was a very big one. But thank you, Patrick, for the support in the event. And Roger H sent us a thumbs up super sticker, and Polly from the Latino Slant and Midnight's Edge Espanol that you all should be watching says, RMB, what? Spy Who Loved Me is an amazing film.
I love Spy Who Loved Me.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. And Dash D's says, please tell me your opinion about Bond not belonging. Isn't a toxic man horse shit thing? He's a strong man that uses women. Can't have that. That it's evil. So I think he's like referring to like how Bond suddenly is problematic in a man out of time right now.
And I think that's where they just need to embrace it. But I mean, Robert could be right on that matter too. So, yeah.
And Johnny Zucco says,
doesn't it sound like a street gang name from?
I was going to say, it sounds like Danny Zuko, like from Greece or whatever.
Yeah,
his
something
brother.
like that.
Oh my God,
Johnny
my
Zucco,
brother.
He just sent $5 with no message.
$5? Where'd he get $5? I'm never giving no money.
Shut up, Tom.
And Mecca J says, you guys have some interesting ideas on how to handle Bond going forward. My question is, which type of directors would you want to direct them?
Well, like I said, I think Tarantino would be a great choice.
Oh, for Bond?
Yeah. Who was the other one that they didn't end up using? They fired him before the movie ended up happening.
I don't remember.
The guy who directed Train Spotting, ain't it? What's his name?
Danny Boyle.
Yeah,
Danny Boyle. Yeah.
And another one would be Christopher Nolan, because he's always wanted to do it.
He's always wanted to. Yeah.
I mean, basically, Inception's almost. It has the biggest homage to On Her Majesty's Secret Service ever.
I think that Ridley Scott would be great, but good God, you better have a good script.
Yeah, yeah,
because he doesn't know how to tell a story without a script.
And you know what? There one more choice, because I think he's in his own way. He's always wanted to do it anyway. Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, but they won't hire an
years
American.
ago, maybe.
Yeah, they've said Broccoli said they would never hire an American director.
Guy Ritchie's one that keeps coming up.
Yep, Guy Ritchie.
I think Guy Ritchie would knock one out of the park.
Yeah, that was another one I was thinking.
Amen.
Of. Well, yep. And what's his face? I'm horrible with names right now because I need to eat some lunch. The guy who was going to direct Ant-Man, Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright might be able to pull
another good one. Yeah, I think he'd be good for it. He'd get the humor. I'll guarantee you that.
Yeah, I think he'd do a fun Bond. And that's what I'm saying. I think you need to bring the fun back from the sound of it, because the last few movies sound depressing as fuck.
And I think that Guy Ritchie could have been really cool as well.
I mean, we shouldn't take it back to the 50s or 60s, but I think they could easily do a period Bond in the 70s that would work perfectly.
Well, and that's another thing I was going to get into eventually here that Robert kind of touched on the point already. This is the last Bond of the 60s, and we enter into the 70s after this. And one point I saw brought up, I don't know how true it is, because you brought up your point, Gary, about how Lazenby was let go from the project. But according to something I saw here, he was actually offered a 7-picture deal, but his agent told him not to, because the 70s were going to kill Bond because of the feminist movement. So it's kind of weird that this was something at that time is also something we're in the similar era of now.
Yeah, where I got my info from was from the documentary that he helped produce and appeared in. And he told them, talked about how Saltzman and Cubby were pissed at him. But I would not doubt for a second, because I think I remember him saying something about that was part of the reason why he didn't shave his beard, because he was trying to be freaky hippie is what happened. He let his hair go long and he grew a beard. And Saltzman and Cubby wanted that to not look like the 60s. He wanted him to look like Bond when he showed up to the premiere. And I think that had an impact on his decision-making, what his agent said.
Yeah, and McJay brings up the documentary called Becoming Bond, which I think
that was it. That's the one, Becoming Bond.
So I'll have to check
Great
that one out.
movie.
Probably.
Yeah, that documentary is amazing.
That's really.
It's on Hulu,
cool,
as I recall.
It's great fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very interested to see where the Bond series goes in the 70s, but I already kind of know from what Robert said earlier, it goes from being a trendsetter to following the trends.
Yeah,
well,
I can't wait to hear what you think, though. To Diamonds Are Forever and Live and Let Die is going to be very, very amusing to hear your opinions.
Well, Diamonds Are Forever let a lot of fans down, and it did worse than any of the Bond films for some reason. And I don't think it was just because it was a lower quality. It just seemed like right after that Lazenby period just sort of kind of hurt Bond. And but it comes back roaring with Roger Moore in Live and Let Die, which is a strange film, again, shot in America for American audiences, driving Fords and shit like that. But damn it, that was a good movie. And probably one of the best theme songs.
Yeah. Indeed. And moving on a little bit from there, Jeff Jerky says for $9.99, do I expect you to talk? Yes. Let's address favorite Bond gadgets from the Yerkman. So, do you have any favorite Bond gadgets so far?
Me, I've only seen the 6 films, so none really stick out exceptionally yet. So I'm gonna let these guys answer real quick.
Keith, you want to go first? Yeah. I'll go.
Or one of you guys.
The jetpack, man, was so cool. Did I steal your thunder again? I'm sorry, buddy. I'm so sorry.
I guess he's right.
That jetpack was so cool because that between that and Lost in Space, I was losing my mind over this thing existing. It's in the real world, you know. That blew my mind.
There's only one gadget.
What's that,
Okay,
Robert?
This.
Oh,
yeah, probably.
I never think of the cars as gadgets.
I was going to say if I had to pick some, it'd have to be the car, probably. Yeah.
Yesterday, it's taken 22 months, but yesterday the final pieces. I've been buying this kit, and it's a 1/8 scale die cast
nice.
DB5, and it's got lights in it. I've been waiting.
Show it again, buddy.
So I'll show you. Look at this. So
look at that.
Here is I got the last pieces. So here is the chassis. So you can see how big
these are huge.
It's huge. It's huge. This thing, it's 1/8 scale. It doesn't fit a 6 scale figure, but now that I have all the parts.
I guess you need a 1/8 scale figure.
Well, yeah, you can. I mean, that's like a Migos size figure, I guess.
Yeah.
But I can't wait because I've been wanting, collecting the pieces. Now I can finally put it together, and that came yesterday, so I'm excited.
I mean that car is just one of those things that just makes me hear the Bond theme, so that's definitely got.
But if you want, if that's a cheat, I want the dart, the from Moonraker, the darts that fire out of the wrist, the little wrist rocket, those armor piercing. I want one of those.
I got to point out too, the sub car is also great. I'm stealing your thunder again.
Jesus is like Jesus.
No, you're stealing my thunder.
Gary keeps taking shit from the black man.
I have only one thing that I want, and that's the sub car. I've been dreaming of that sub car since the first time I saw it.
Yep.
So you can have everything. You take your jetpacks. I'm having that sub car.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Keith, your turn. What do you got?
Yeah, which sloppy
It's like the shoes. I like his shoes. Okay, leave me alone.
The defibrillator.
No, but that's actually a really good one. The defibrillator from Casino Royale. That was one of my runner-ups.
Oh shit! I'm like the defibrillator. Oh, that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, as we all get older, that could come in handy. Carrying around with you.
Good.
It's happening.
I figured I could have. Yeah. But still, no. If I were to really think about it, it would
the ghetto blaster.
Really, dude.
Remember? Really? You remember?
Yeah, I know.
And how Desmond Llewellyn says it, the ghetto blaster. I love it.
You know what? The suitcase, the exploding suitcase that if you open it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
the deadly tea set that you put on the electromagnetics and it takes
I
off someone's
forgot
head?
about that one. Oh, geez.
Of course, you'd have to get the table that has the electromagnetics on it too, so that's a lot of work. You can't really carry it with you.
After listening to you guys and taking all the really cool ones, I'll go ahead and just go with the briefcase.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Good answer.
Since that's one of the ones in the 6 films besides the car, I'll say the brief because I do. Yeah, that one stuck out to me as a pretty clever one.
Yeah,
Andre. Besides, you said the sub car. Never mind.
Sub car. Yeah.
I think that
above
Oddjob had a really cool thing with his hat. Goldfinger.
Oh yeah,
but it wasn't a Bond gadget. But that was freaking cool that he could throw his hat and kill people.
Yeah, absolutely. Useful.
Well, how often have you gotten a hold of a hat like that and just thought to yourself, I wonder? I
got to tell you what, in the Army, drill sergeants were notorious for throwing their hats at you. And I never got hit by one, but I saw a lot of idiots get nailed by those hats when they did something stupid.
Oh.
So I'm like, yeah, that shit works.
A lot of people in the chat are saying exploding pen, so I'm going to say that's probably
I remember that too. Yeah,
one in the chat. Yeah. All right, so what else we got, Andre?
Yes, Rob Alta says, I wonder what a Patrick McGoohan Bond would have been like.
I would have loved that.
Ditto, man. I guarantee you everybody here probably enjoyed The Prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Patrick McGoohan was the shit.
Yeah. 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 I agree.
Yeah. And Destiny Captain says, Stargate Universe did not kill Stargate. The financial collapse of 2008 did that. Yeah, well, I don't know anything about it, to be honest. I just know that if it is brought back, it will be brought back to be killed again, even worse, by the last people you would ever want associated with Stargate.
Oh, Thomas is here. Hi, Thomas.
And
Guildman.
And Stubble McShave says, for 20 Swedish krona, worst Bond movie, Die Another Day. Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that, but it does have
great
opening credits.
Yeah,
best opening credits, worst movie. So off to a great start. It was all downhill from there.
Yeah. Although I have to say, I really don't like A View to a Kill.
I don't think anybody really does.
No,
I used to like it when I was a kid.
Got a good song.
See when we rewatch it, like for years, to me, Christopher Walken would just be Zorin.
Right.
Yeah, but again, that was me as a kid. We'll see how it holds up now when we get that.
Wait,
far.
you're telling me Christopher Walken plays a Bond villain?
Oh yeah.
Well,
yeah.
It's a spoiler alert, I guess.
Max Zorin and his henchman is Grace Jones.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm down for this.
Oh yeah.
They got a great cast. There's some good stuff in it too,
I'm gonna kill you.
That movie that
I'm not gonna do it quick.
Met and got with Grace Jones as well.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
See, you guys are like, oh, you're gonna hate it. Like, no, you're gonna watch. I'm gonna love like the cheesiest shit in this series. You guys,
you might, you might
maybe
really enjoy that.
Maybe.
I'm a cheese guy, okay? Like I love some cheesy shit. Like you don't understand.
Yeah, you do. you are a cheesy dude. I love.
I'm
that
the guy who
about
came
you.
up with nunchucking dinosaurs for fuck's sake.
I mean, you sang that theme song for us 80s night. I mean, fuck.
That's right.
You're
Oh yeah, I
cheesy.
forgot to do that other version. Did you still need that? I totally spaced that out.
No, because I want to do something else.
Okay,
I still haven't released yours and Keith's and my episode.
Oh,
yet.
okay. All right.
And I want to do a whole new theme for the whole 80s thing and
Gotcha.
launch it with your episode.
Oh Jesus. Okay. Well,
I also have something. I have
Go ahead.
something else in mind that I would like you and Andre and Robert to consider, but we can talk about that after the show.
yeah, I was gonna
And
say,
Robert-
talk shop
Robert,
later.
I wanted to mention to you, I messaged Charlie the other night. I really would like to have a Blade Runner discussion group just for one episode. and get you and Charlie on there. Say something to him. Remind him to get back to me, because I would really love to have a panel of talking about Blade Runner.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I'm always up to talk about Blade Runner.
Me too.
So are we going to discuss whether or not Deckard's a replicant?
No, I kind of got my fill with Doomcock on that one. I mean, I would try to tell him. I tried to explain to him what a unicorn is in common parlance, and he's like, whatever. And I'm like, okay, this is not going to be a discussion. I'm just going to shut up and just have fun.
All right. Well, we'll get to that in a later discussion.
No, I actually can bring a super chat up on screen. This says for $5. The Handmaid's Tale is going to be a problem with Amazon now owning that show and airing on Hulu.
Oh, I didn't know they owned it.
It's just going to have to continue. That's pre-existing deals.
Yeah.
I mean, CBS produced stuff that was on NBC back when we were kids. So no,
honestly, most of the time those kind of deals are not a problem, because that's outside money coming in. Mm-hmm. The rarity is when you hear the stories like when Ike Perlmutter would lose his fucking mind and, like say, pull down all the X-Men and Fantastic Four shit out of, like that kind of stuff normally doesn't happen. That's like some fucking high school shit. Like normally it's like, hey, that's money coming in that we're not putting out there, It's in this case, I don't see them, just like Fox and Disney, they still have a lot of their same deals going together, even though the Fox network has nothing to do with Fox Studios anymore. So. Yeah. Unless Andre had any more to add to that, I think that's
No, I don't have any. I don't have much more to add, and with that, I believe we are fully caught up, and I think we have said everything there is to say.
Super sticker from Mr. Tickle Trunk.
Hey, Tickle Trunk, how you doing, man?
He's came back. He left earlier. I did want to get everybody's. I know we're not going to spend much time on this now, because I thought we'd have a little more time to spend on it, but we've gone way over. I did want to get everybody's feeling on where they think things are going for the future, though, with Bond, now that MGM is under Amazon, which that was brought up in that super chat. And
well, you guys have talked about it, and I
a little bit.
I don't know where they are right now. I know that they did massive reshoots. That audience reaction was not very good to the new film, and I don't know why. I mean, everybody has their assumptions of what it is. I don't know. Where are we? I mean, you guys actually have a pulse on this. Where are we?
I think the bigger question is, Robert brought up earlier, and I wanted you to expand on it, maybe, Robert, a little bit more real quick, as much as you can with the few minutes we're going to take here on it. You said that there's the possibility that the Broccolis and Eon may just sell
Retire?
it to Amazon.
I mean, I do see that as a possibility, because that they've been making the movie since 1962. It was the Broccoli family business. They've made more money than God on this franchise, and I see that it's a natural ending point. And I mean, sure, they could start over, but if you look at, there used to be a time frame. Bond movies would come out every 2 years.
Right.
So maybe it would be 3 years, but for the most part, it was an every 2 year period of time until 1989, when the ongoing shenanigans with MGM and Kevin McClory, there was a 6-year gap between License to Kill and GoldenEye, which came out in 1995. And then we were kind of back to the every 2 years. GoldenEye led to Tomorrow Never Dies, which led to The World Is Not Enough, which led to Die Another Day. And it was pretty consistent. And then there was a little bit more of a gap when they brought Daniel Craig in. But then the Daniel Craig Bonds, I mean, Craig debuted in 2006, and it's now 2021, and COVID, let's say 2020, and that there's only been 5 Bonds in 14 years, now 15 years. So that's a long time. And if they go cast another Bond, it's going to be probably another 3 years before we get another Bond movie, maybe 2. Mm-hmm. But you're going to have to start all over, and you're going to have to have a new script. I just wonder, what more do you have to do? I mean, I see that the Daniel Craig Bond series is sort of an encapsulation of the entire character of James Bond, going from being a young man to being a retired agent who's now married with a kid, you know, and I think that they've tried to take Bond through a whole life cycle. So my question is, you're not going to go back and see somebody become a 00 again because they did that.
Yeah,
Casino Royale. So you'd have to. What do you do? And I've often
mid-career.
I ponder this. So, you know, mid-career Bond, but then again, in this day and age, who do you go after? You know, and I think that the last Spectre had this problem. Well, we've got this intelligence gathering AI system, you know, that we're going to infiltrate, and it becomes like the world, unless you're going to go full on fantasy Bond, where there's some, like, I don't even believe a megalomaniac would destroy the world anymore because there's no money in it. You know, it's like now we've got the idea that you have one guy controlling $160 billion like a Jeff Bezos, and literally is and both Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos might as well be building their Moonraker space stations right now. I mean, we live in a world where Bond villains have been supplanted by real people. So unless you have some terrorist organization that wants to just destroy the world and start over, like a 12 Monkeys thing where that somebody's going to unleash a virus or something like that. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, unless they want to do like some kind of like, you know, great reset or something, massively shifting the wealth from all the common folk over to themselves. Like
which
I feel like the modern day Bond would do.
I think that's kind of what we're going to see. I assume with Rami Malek, whether he's a riff on Dr. No, that they've created some kind of genetically targeted virus or something like that they're going to unleash. And at this point in my life, I kind of think that, well, you know, if there was a megalomaniac like Thanos that was going to eliminate half the population of the planet very quickly, I'm like, would that be so bad? Like, really? Would really?
Virus have a history of working. Just look it through history. And,
but I'm just like, maybe humanity could use a great culling. So, I mean, so Bond is like, you know what? I mean, I've been looking at how much gun violence happens in the United States. People believe in the flat earth and QAnon. Man, maybe it's time just to let everything. You know what? I'm going to hang back.
Robert,
I'm going to hang back. But I'm kidding, of course. I'm kidding. I kid. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's. I think that's a big question. I mean, when Bond first started, the Cold War happened. We had two factions, obviously, the rise of communism. Hell, half America wants to turn ourselves over and be Marxists. It's like, what are we fighting for anymore? What does Bond represent? Is there anything to represent? And I think that's the real question, is that in this day and age, who are the good guys? And I don't know. I mean, our world has become so ambiguous and so tribal and so divided that, I mean, it would be really interesting to watch. Like, I really like The Kingsman, you know, and I'm like, I'm on Sam Jackson's side. I kind of was
hashtag Thanos did nothing wrong.
I mean, you know,
we need a snap.
I mean, you might as well, if life hands you lemons and you lose half the population of the earth, I'd see it as an opportunity to really snap back and be the best humanity we can be. But nope. We don't. We fall into despair. No, but I mean,
I different conversation. Yeah,
that is. But I'm kidding. I'm joking.
No, you remember that time when Robert Meyer Burnett had a career?
Well, no, but I mean, I think that what was interesting is, if you look in The Kingsman, that movie had a really interesting central conceit. What Sam Jackson was doing, that was a really interesting Bond villain, and the idea that he's going to save all the elites, you know, and sequester everybody away. I'm like, this is a good, I mean, it was over the top, but this is a good Bond plot. And I really liked The Kingsman. And I was thinking to myself, this could have been a great Bond movie because it brings back the megalomaniac villain. And obviously, yes, Sam Jackson needed to be defeated. I understand. I don't think, but it was interesting. I mean, it had a fantasy element, and the Savile Row headquarters of the Kingsmen and all that. I liked all that. I thought it was pretty neat. And I'm like, obviously the tone was a little over the top, and you could bring that Bondian tone back. But I think the Kingsmen might show the way to how to move into the future. And the same was true of the Mission Impossible franchise. I mean, both, I think, Rogue Nation and Fallout were great Bond films when you had a rogue. It's kind of like 006, Alex Trevelyan in GoldenEye, you know, a former agent that has a change of heart. And so Bond's basically going after a friend, you know, and that's who wants to watch the world burn, I think, or destroy the financial markets. I think that's there is a way to make that kind of thing work. And I'm thinking,
and there was that whole injury in that movie too, when he discovers who one of the villains is, one of the old double O's.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was his friend.
I love that.
Yeah, and they're on a mission together, and Bond thinks his Alex was killed, not knowing that it was all a setup, that he'd gone over to the other side. And I think that the way to make, they tried to do this with the Daniel Craig thing, is make it more personal to him. Like there's an emotional connection now. It's not just a mission, but to avenge Vesper's death, to go after Mr. White. I think doing something like that can make it work, because the world stage has become so muddled. And it's, whereas Bond used to have clear cut, like during the Cold War, we knew the communists and Soviets, or it was Smersh at first and then Spectre. These were very obviously bad people that were differing ideologies from the West.
And based on real world elements that people were scared of, terrified of.
Yes.
I grew up in that era too, because I remember the whole threat of nuclear attacks. We did the drills. Christ, that was a freaking weird period to grow up in. But I think that doing the personal thing is probably the way to go. And going with villains that have an impact on Bond. So whoever steps into the shoes, if they're going to continue, that's the way I would go too.
Right. And I jokingly said one of the things about what Sam Jackson's villain in Kingsman was trying to do was something that, depending on how you looked at it, and same with, like, if we're all going to die anyway, so I'm going to expedite the process for a majority of the planet Earth. The percentage. Is that such a bad thing? I think ideologically, when you get into those kinds of questions, and it goes back to what Hugo Drax and Stromberg wanted to do in Moonraker and Spy Who Loved Me, where they literally were going to precipitate in Spy Who Loved Me a war between the superpowers to create a nuclear winter or whatever. And then in Moonraker, Hugo Drax was going to use literally poison orchids derived, and drop them from orbit. And so Bond had to stop that. But a combination of the two, And
in the book, it was a Zeppelin, as I recall, right?
Yeah. Something. Yeah. And it's just interesting. I think that's what you have to do, is that you have to make the stakes, I think, a bit more personal now, because also movie-going audiences expect that.
Exactly. And Andre, Mr. Tickletrunk has a little comment there, I think, is pertinent to what was just said.
Let me see if I can find it.
Right. Let's see if we can get that up.
He did a $5.
It was a super chat.
Yeah, we got it here. Got it right here. Mr. Tickletrunk says, "Oh, by the way, maybe we need a little culling. A new Bond villain? Hold submitted. Remember, Rob, that's the best villains think they are the hero."
Yep.
No, absolutely. And that makes it cool. Obviously, when it comes down to that kind of thing, you need a villain that has something that's monstrous that we can all be scared of, whether it's destroying financial markets, which will lead to anarchy or whatever, or literally killing half the population or doing whatever. We have, as an audience, we have to fear the results. Even in Thunderball, they're going to drop nuclear bombs on 2 cities unless they get their millions of dollars. Right. That's terrifying.
Yeah. And then ActionCom says, for $10, thank you so much. What about the Octopussy type villain, Orlov, that uses government officials using the power at their fingertips to try and advance their careers? And if a lot of people die, spilled milk.
Right. That's, bureaucracy is villain.
Exactly,
is always
bureaucracy,
good.
Yeah. What do you think of because we brought him up, Elon Musk, and then you got Bezos and what's his name, Bill Gates. They are ripe for the picking for a villain in a Bond film, because they want to make a change,
right?
And they would also have access to the bureaucratic aspects of government.
Yeah, it's
well,
just how do you?
I think that the Iron Man type is probably more likely to be used than any of those. I think like that might sit a little bit too close to some. And also, Christopher Fries says, "Where is the love for Hank Scorpio?"
Yeah,
That was my thought exactly. Who the
I'm
hell
drawing a
is Hank
blank.
Scorpio?
So
apparently nowhere to be found. There is no love for Hank Scorpio here because we
but
don't
you
even
mean
know
the
who the hell
Simpsons?
he is.
I think the Simpsons character that is a parody of Richard Branson.
Yep, just looked it up. Yep.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. That's how memorable that was. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, very, very memorable. Never saw it.
He's made 2 appearances.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, but yeah, not something that really sticks out from The Simpsons all that much. But there you go.
Brooks.
But I do think that, having like Albert Brooks and like The Driver, that. But I think that the key to making a great Bond series moving forward is that villain. Who or what is it an organization? I thought the organization of ex-spies in the Mission Impossible movies, that's a really great idea. And the continuity they had between Rogue Nation and Fallout was really, really good. And I think that's what you need to come up with. What is the worst kind of villain that we can have today? And I think whether it's somebody who wants to have the great restart or take civilization down and have us start from scratch is pretty interesting. I mean, my hometown of Seattle saw during the riots there, you had a group occupied part of the city, and decided we're gonna build our utopian civilization, even though we're still going to be using the infrastructure that other people have built. But okay, I mean, it would be interesting if you had a combination of cult leader, megalomaniac, rich person who wanted to facilitate the great restart, and we all go back to. It's like, hey, the Battlestar Galactica is being flown into the sun, and we're going to start all over here with proto-humans in Africa. That's what we're going to do. Something like that could be pretty interesting. Maybe.
Yeah, and we also have a couple of other super chats that came in between here. Mr. Tickle Trunk sent us a doggy super sticker, and Insomatic 101 says for $5 with Bond, I think Amazon should continue making movies. Will they make a series of 000 agents for the next 2 years, then meld both? Yeah, it's entirely up to them, isn't it? If they get everything lock, stock, and two smoking barrels. So
I would like to see them do the opposite. I would love to see Amazon do a series about the rise of Spectre. And where did Spectre come from? And you're watching
and to what end?
Yeah, and what happens? And so in the Spectre show, Bond's the villain. They're always going out. They're always thwarting all the intelligence agencies around the world. So you flip the story, and you could even start with Smersh. You could start, say, at the end of the Cold War, and show how the Russian intelligence organization might have morphed into Spectre using, like in Sum of All Fears, the Tom Clancy movie. You had right-wing nationalists and Nazi sympathizers send that nuclear bomb to Boston. And it actually went off. And what if you showed sort of the remnants of in the wake of World War II, they started Spectre or something, and it would be interesting to watch an evil organization develop and flourish throughout the 60s. I think that could be cool. Flip that script, and then make Bond their villain.
Yeah, that would. Absolutely could be interesting. No argue there. And then we also have the Gay Rascal says, I'm late. So sorry. Hello, everybody. That said, underrated film. Great panel. Oh, thank you.
All right, we'll start all over just for you.
Yeah. Or better yet, you can just slide the timer back to the beginning. That'll do the same thing. And let's see. Yeah, and then I think we're fully caught up. I do think so. I'm just going to double check here. Yes, then we are fully caught up, and I think we got everything. So yeah, and the next Bond movie then would be Diamonds Are Forever. which features the glorious return of Sean Connery, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yes, and also
I don't know if it's glorious though.
Yeah, that's why I made the face. I'm like,
well, it was a return, and
Yeah.
Insomatic 101 says you sold me on that pitch, RMB, and yeah, I agree. That's a great pitch. I hope that the powers that be at Amazon are smart enough to listen. But then again, it's the same people that cancelled Conan the Barbarian for being too woke, and they had no problems pumping hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions into a Lord of the Rings series that's being showrun by the two people that have never even gotten a movie made, but they did write that complete utter rubbish Star Trek IV from J.J. Abrams that never got made, the one which would have reunited Kirk with his dad. That's who they put to
Because that's
run.
what we Star Trek fans are clamoring for.
Yeah, exactly. And anyway, if that is an indication of what they might be doing with their MGM properties, I think it's good that we go through the classics, the ones that are still good and always will be, as historical documents, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. With that, Keith and Gary, where can people find you? I had to stop, and I was like, wait, what was it I was not supposed to say again? But Keith and Gary, where can people find you?
well, you can find Keith and me at Pop Culture Minefield on the YouTubes. It's just some crazy boys talking stuff about nerdy shit. Sometimes we shoot from our bathrooms, like Keith is right now. He's in the shower.
With a green curtain.
Oh. I'd show you what's behind the curtain, but that's a little too.
Well, you got a green screen. I don't know why you're just not using it. There you go.
I can't come up with anything really cool. Plus, when I grow up, as I've often said, I want to be Tom, so I'm trying to emulate Tom's right here. So,
Yep,
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. But that's it. You can find us on Twitter at Pop Cult Minefield because you can't put the word cult full word. It's too many letters, so we can't have her full name on Twitter. So it's Pop Cult Minefield, and you can find us liking a lot of crap that you guys post. So
pretty much, big fans of everyone, including RMB.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been fun to stream with you guys again.
I think you guys have met before, at least once.
Yeah, no, we did
yeah.
a stream.
They've been on our show. He's been on our
I
show.
was gonna say you guys know each other. All right, and also check out the Burnett work, right, Robert? And I heard you got a film coming up in a festival. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, for those of you, like last night, I produced and edited a film called Tango Shalom that's going to be at the Brooklyn Film Festival. It's going to on June 10th, and it's actually an in-person event. It just got into the Madrid International Film Festival, and it's going to the Buenos Aires International Film Festival. This little movie that could. I mean, it sort of defines, I like to call it a Jewish indie spiritual quest family dance comedy fable, because the world needs more of those.
And you said that in one breath.
I know. There you go. So if ever you wanted to know what that was like, Tango Shalom is playing around. It's an underdog story playing at a movie theater or a festival near you.
Awesome.
And then also Dota, Dragon's Blood.
Yes.
On Netflix. And we're deep into season 2 now, which that's kind of fun.
You're already deep into season 1, but now you're deep into season 2.
Deep undercover.
That's right. You got it.
This is not my.
You won't even see me. You call my phone. Be like, Axel, where you? I won't even answer.
Still got a little ass left, Chief.
Yeah.
Still one of the greatest movies ever made. I don't care what anyone
says. Don't fuck
says.
with me, Axel. Not today.
It's one of the greatest movies ever made. Ever.
Absolutely.
The perfect action comedy.
And then we got Insomniac 101. Isn't that right, Andre?
Yeah, it sounds like it. And or Insomatic 101, actually. And he says, do you think Bond will ever get back to as popular as it was? Just want to know before you guys go. So, Keith and Gary, do you think that Bond can ever return to the popularity he once had?
It's become so divisive. I just don't think so.
I think it could if you had the right story and the right director. And then you just have to keep it up. You know, if they treated it the same way Kevin Feige treats the MCU, possibly.
I don't think so, because Bond was M said it best in GoldenEye. Bond is a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a product of the Cold War, and I think that ultimately the Bond franchise, which used to be unique, providing audiences with thrills they couldn't get elsewhere, has been supplanted. And I think that we've seen other franchises, whether it's Mission Impossible, whether it's John Wick, whether take your pick. The Kingsman, we're getting the King's Man, the prequel movie that looks pretty damn good. Yeah. I just think that the world has changed a bit. So, but like you said, like Keith said, with the right director and the right, the Bond franchise is making it's $1 billion franchise. Skyfall made $1 billion. That's nothing to sneeze at. So made more money than any Mission Impossible movie.
With a film like, say, Atomic Blonde, if you can get people to sit through a movie like that, and that was set during the 80s, I think you could do something. I think anything's possible, especially if you're going to either readapt or properly adapt all of Ian Fleming's stories. And again, I know I keep repeating this, but John Gardner's books are still good themselves.
Yeah, I agree.
4 or 5.
I still think that your idea is probably the better one, where they turn to more episodic television type thing of even if it's web based, would be a better way to go with Bond in the long run.
Kind of like an online miniseries, something that you can have either at Netflix or in this case
Amazon, yeah.
And
Amazon would
like
be smart if they did. Yeah, a high end TV series, it would really, I think,
period takes place, in the 60s to the 70s.
Well, like you said, they could just sit there and adapt the books.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that is the best way to go. And I do not think that Bond will ever regain the popularity he had when the character was at the height of its popularity. Franchises, they have their time in the absolute prime and in the sunlight and the mass culture, and they may never go away, but they're not gonna go back to what they once were. I think that as time goes by, Bond is going to be more and more big niche, but once the generation that grew up with Bond is no longer there, another decade, 2, 3, 4, 5 decades, then it's up to like new generations to discover and rediscover. And I'm unconvinced that enough people or more people are going to discover Bond in the future than already did when Bond was in mass market paperbacks and everything like that.
Yeah.
And the movies were as popular as the MCU. So I think that Bond will always be there, but more and more as a niche.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Again, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I was just going to say, Hugh Jackman, Amazon, Bond. You have him do Icebreaker with Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, go a little older. That could work. But again, but again, it's with the stories we're getting. Are those stories significantly different enough that you're going to get new audiences? Like, I really like Richard Madden in that 6-episode Bodyguard series he did for the BBC, where I thought that was pretty good. And I think the way you could make Bond, instead of action, make the story have the twists and turns, like a Game of Thrones, Reigns of Castamere, the Red Wedding. You make a Bond, the plotting, not like plotting, but plotting of a Bond movie needs to be, if you could do that and capture audiences, do a limited series, do a 10-episode limited series like what Scott Frank did with Queen's Gambit or Godless, what he's doing now with the science fiction series The Sparrow. Something like that would be pretty great.
Especially if you brought in different directors to do different stories, but kept the same actor.
Right.
For instance, just as an example, if you had access to Hugh Jackman to do the older Bond stuff from John Gardner, and it's a different director per each story.
Right. Yeah. Could be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gents, I must jump off this stream because I have to do teach a class that I'm late for.
Oh.
Well, your timing is perfect anyway, because we're about to wrap this up anyway, right, Andre? Because I think we're all caught up on everything. And you guys have gotten a chance to plug everything. And yeah, with that, do join us tomorrow morning for Midnight's Edge in the morning and for our next Bond review. If not, it will be something else, but we'll get to that real soon.
And also be back here in 2 weeks, because then we have something really special here, don't we, Tom and
Yes.
Robert?
Yes,
then
we do.
have
June
something
10th,
very
also
cool.
the same day as the other event. So hopefully they won't interfere with each other. But we're doing a very special reunion, including the main stars of Stand and Deliver. So check that out in conjunction with the Latino Slant. I saw Paulie was in the chat earlier. So shout out to him for helping getting that put together and everybody involved. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. So until then, guys, please hit the like button, share, all that good stuff. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you.